Chapter 935. Turin was pleasantly surprised, and his tone was somewhat excited. Master, this subordinate believes that if Gene Xin has the opportunity to develop, he will definitely become a cornerstone of the three armies. It's rare to see you admire someone so much. Xiao Su chuckled softly. Turin smiled and was a bit embarrassed. Perhaps I really do think of this kid as one of my own. All right, you're dismissed. At this time, a soldier entered and informed Chu Qingyan that she had woken up. Xiao Su looked out the window and saw that the sun was already setting. He walked towards her courtyard. Those who wanted to use her should at least consult with her. When he entered, she was frowning as she drank medicine. Every time he saw her drink medicine, it was as if she was being tortured. He couldn't help but smile, and the corners of his eyes curved as he admired her unspeakable suffering. Then, he took out a small box from his sleeve and handed it to her. What is this? She suddenly gulped it down and stuck her tongue out. She couldn't stand the numbness brought by the bitter taste. It's good medicine that can relieve your current pain. Xiao Su smiled calmly. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes. What she hated the most right now was good medicine. However, seeing that this small box was quite exquisite, she endured the bitter taste in her mouth and took it. Opening it, she saw that it was actually a few plums. In this kind of harsh environment, it was already good enough to be able to eat 3 full meals. To be able to see such a snack was simply too amazing. Where did you get this? She picked one up and stuffed it into her mouth, using its sweetness to dilute the bitterness in her mouth. Xiao Su sat down in front of her. I conjured it up. I think you just made it up. She snorted and picked up a plum and brought it to his mouth. He shook his head. She snorted again and put the plum into her mouth. He had asked his subordinates to find this box of candied plums. He knew that she would have to drink medicine for half a month. However, after Jiangning County was severely damaged, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to find some decent pastries. The three armies were all burly men, so they couldn't make those exquisite snacks. This small box of candied fruits would not be able to support her for half a month. Xiao Su looked at her happily eating a box of candied fruits. He suddenly felt that it would be difficult for him to satisfy her with such a small thing in the future. In the past, he had heard people say that money could buy everything in the world that could be measured by value. However, at this moment, he deeply felt that some things were ordinary and cheap. Sometimes, no matter how much money you spent, you could not buy them. He felt a deep sense of guilt. As Chu Qingyan ate, she noticed that the person in front of her seemed to be unusually silent. She couldn't help but raise her head. When she saw the deep emotions in his eyes, she couldn't help but be stunned. Thinking that he was worried about the upcoming battle, she couldn't help but smile softly. Big Ice Cube, tomorrow's matters are tomorrow's worries. Don't give yourself too much pressure. Xiao Su restrained the emotions in his eyes and stared at her. Seeing that her complexion was much better than before, he felt relieved and said, I have something to discuss with you. I'd like to hear the details. She put down the box and looked like she was listening attentively. The army is lacking people. I think that Gene Xin is a good candidate regardless of talent or martial arts. Are you willing to let him come out and try? Chu Qingyan blinked. You mean to let Gene Xin join the army? You can say that. Xiao Su nodded. A bright smile appeared on her face and she spoke quickly. This is a good suggestion. I have always felt that he is a rare talent. If he keeps staying by my side, he will be buried. Then I'll take it that you agree. Starting tomorrow, let him take over a portion of the soldiers. Xiao Su said. Chu Qingyan heard this and quickly waved her hand. No. I'm only saying whether to let him go or not. The person who makes the decision is not me. This matter needs to be asked for Gene Xion's opinion. I am a very democratic person. It all depends on his wishes. Xiao Su chuckled. Aren't you afraid that your democracy will spoil them? If they could be spoiled, they wouldn't have stayed by my side for so long. I'm not bad at judging people, okay? She couldn't help but refute. Okay, then I'll let Turin talk to him about this matter and let him choose for himself. He agreed. Chu Qingyan nodded heavily. Then she hugged his arm and acted coquettishly, asking him to accompany her for dinner. She knew that he hadn't eaten a single drop of rice today and had been busy with work, so she changed her method of asking him to eat first. Xiao Su asked someone to deliver the food and then called Turin over. He asked him to talk to Jean Xin about joining the army. Although Xiao Su was the commander-in-chief, the food was basically the same as the soldiers. Simple white water tofu, cornbread, pickled vegetables and porridge. During the march, food was very scarce. Even if they had enough now, they didn't dare to use too much. They were afraid that one day, they would be trapped, or the imperial court wouldn't be able to provide them in time. Eating steamed buns and eating pickled vegetables, the two of them didn't even frown. People who achieved great things could wear gold and jade clothes and not be arrogant people. They could also bury their heads in pickled vegetables and steamed buns and be indifferent. Xiao Su looked at the person in front of him who was eating steamed buns, and a soft light appeared in his eyes. If these foods were placed in front of the noble ladies in the capital, they would probably feel disgusted even by looking at them. However, his little fellow had the dignified elegance of a noble. She also sat on the ground and used the sky as her blanket and the earth as her bed. Such a woman was rarely seen in the world. It was a blessing in this life to be able to meet such a woman. At the end of the meal, Turin walked in with a strange expression. What did Jean Xin say? Chu Qingyan had just put down the bowl when she saw him. She couldn't help but ask with a smile. Turin glanced at his master, then lowered his head and sighed. Jean Xin said that he doesn't want to join the army. He only wants to stay by your side. Chu Qingyan was a little surprised. She turned to look at the person beside her and sighed. I didn't expect that the position by my side would be more attractive than following you. Xiao Su was speechless as he listened to the little fellow's voice. Then what should we do now, masters? Turin felt that it was a pity that Jean Xin missed this opportunity. When Turin looked over, Chu Qingyan raised her hands and said, I'm an injured person. You can solve this matter yourselves. Whether or not you can persuade Jean Xin, you can only rely on yourselves. I can't risk my life to drive my people to your side. Xiao Su knew that she had already made the biggest concession. He muttered to himself for a moment, then said to Turin, Ask Jean Xin to come to the study later. Turin accepted the order and retreated. At this time, Chu Qingyan rested her chin on her hands and looked at him with narrowed eyes. Does this count as poaching my people in front of me? Yes, but you've already acquiesced. Xiao Su glanced at her and said helplessly, All right, I'm very sad that I'm about to lose a trusted subordinate. Sorry, I didn't see it. Chu Qingyan snorted and planned to ignore him for 6 hours. Xiao Su laughed, but at this time, he was more focused on how to persuade Jean Xin. Chapter 936. After the door to the study was knocked on, it was pushed in from the outside. After Jean Xin stepped through the threshold, he turned around and closed the door. Then, he calmly walked in front of Xiao Su. I heard that you were looking for this subordinate? Xiao Su nodded. Turin should have already told you about this matter. This prince is looking for you precisely because of this matter. Your Highness, this subordinate has already stated that I don't have much desire to join the army. Therefore, this subordinate would like to thank your Highness for your high opinion and kindness. Jean Xin repeated what he had said to Turin before. These words didn't cause much of a change in Xiao Su's expression. His eyes indifferently looked at the youth in front of him. 15 years old was a hot-blooded youth. However, the Jean Xin in front of him was calm and collected. He had a steadiness that didn't match his age. He asked, Can you tell me the reason why you don't want to join the army? Although Jean Xin didn't know why His Highness suddenly wanted him to join the army, he followed his inner thoughts and answered truthfully, Jean Xin doesn't have such a far-sighted idea. For example, I don't have such a strong sense of patriotism. This subordinate also doesn't value the people of the world as much as your Highness does. These words sounded somewhat rebellious. However, compared to the words that went against one's heart, Xiao Su felt that these words were more to his liking. Jean Xin didn't deliberately observe Xiao Su's expression. He continued to follow his inner thoughts. Although this subordinate doesn't have such a broad mind to accommodate the world, and I don't value fame and fortune as much as you do, this subordinate has a belief in his heart that has never changed. That is, to stay by Master's side and protect her safety. In front of him, he said that he wouldn't leave his Ayan. Xiao Su's eyes flashed. He looked at Jean Xian with interest. He really has guts. However, he could tell that he still had a lot to say, so he continued to listen without batting an eyelid. Your Highness, my life was saved by Master. Even my ability to survive was given to me by Master. I have a debt of gratitude that I can't repay even with my life. Master, and you have a very special position in the depths of this dynasty. There are many people in the dark who are eyeing you covetously. I don't have any other skills, only martial arts and a fearless heart. I want to stay by Master's side and resist those demons and monsters for her. Jin Xin's words weren't very impassioned, nor did they move people's hearts. He simply and calmly explained the reason. Xiao Su was very satisfied with such a neither servile nor overbearing attitude. However, he was even more gratified that the little fellow had made the right decision to take him in. She had gained a loyal subordinate. He had to admit that the little guy had a good eye for people. Because from Jean Xian's speech and expression, he could tell that these words came from the bottom of his heart. Jean Xian, your words have surprised this prince, but I'm also very gratified. At the same time, I'm very grateful for your feelings towards Ayan. Xiao Su smiled faintly. Jean Xian replied, Your Highness, this is Jean Xian's decision. You don't have to say that. Xiao Su nodded. This person was able to remain unmoved by praise and humiliation. He was a talent. Jean Xian, you said that you want to stay by Ayan's side to protect her? Then if this prince said that there was a better chance to protect her than staying by her side, would you be willing to do it? Xiao Su slowly said. Jean Xian looked puzzled. The chance you're talking about is to enlist in the army? But this subordinate doesn't understand what this has to do with protecting Master? Xiao Su looked at him with a half-smile. That's right, enlisting in the army. If we're talking about the actual connection, it's not as obvious as it seems on the surface. However, it's better than staying by her side to protect her. These words successfully piqued Jean Xian's curiosity. Can your Highness explain it more clearly? Xiao Su nodded. He stood up and walked to the windowsill. He turned to look at Jean Xian with his hands behind his back. His voice was as cold as falling snow. You're right. There's a group of people eyeing us covetously. They're hiding behind the scenes, constantly trying to kill us. However, for Ayan, your protection can only treat the symptoms and not the root cause. You can stop them for a while, but you can't stop them forever. Jean Xian fell silent. He couldn't refute His Highness's words, and they resonated in his heart. Jean Xian, do you know that the scariest thing in this world isn't open or covert attacks, but rather killing people without them noticing? Swords and knives can be dodged, but in most fights, it's not necessarily a fight on the surface. Martial strength is the worst strategy. Only a battle of wits is truly terrifying. Inside the window, Xiao Su stood with his hands behind his back. The bright moonlight fell on his hair and clothes. There was no sadness or joy in his eyes. He was too high to reach. When Jean Xian heard these words, he was a little startled. Although he understood the reasoning, he still couldn't understand what this had to do with him enlisting in the army. However, His Highness' godlike appearance made him unable to help but continue to listen. For Ayan, the true danger isn't on the battlefield, but after the war is over. This king hopes that you can grow up in the army and make a name for yourself. Then, you can enter the capital as an official and become Ayan's hidden strength. You can become her strongest shield and help her block those with bad intentions. Xiao Su calmly looked into Jean Xian's eyes and said these words. Just now, he had done so much foreshadowing in order to draw out the following words. At this time, he needed someone he could trust to be a general. At the same time, he needed Ayan to develop his strength. Otherwise, it would be too late. Once the war was over and he returned to the capital with glory, Ayan would no longer be like 5 years ago when she had no one to rely on in front of the nobles. Before he left the court, he had to ensure Ayan's safety. In the tangled and complicated political situation of Jingdo, Ayan needed to have her own connections and power. Only then could she be safe and worry-free in places he could not see or protect. Jean Xian was without a doubt the best choice. Jean Xian wasn't stupid. With just a few words, he understood Xiao Su's intentions. Does your highness mean for this subordinate to walk from behind the master's back to the stage? If this subordinate has a higher authority, he can better protect the master? That's right. What do you think? Xiao Su nodded. Your highness, do you really think this subordinate can do it? Jean Xian was a little unconfident. He had never thought about this question. Xiao Su smiled. You have to ask yourself. This prince and Ian won't make the decision for you. You have a day to go back and think it over. Jean Xian was silent for a moment. Then, he knelt down and raised his head without hesitation. Your highness, this subordinate can do it. Have you thought it through? Xiao Su looked at him steadily. This subordinate has thought it through very clearly. Your highness, please make the arrangements for this subordinate. Jean Xian's tone was firm. If there was another way to repay his master, no matter how difficult or dangerous it was, he would try it. Xiao Su looked at him and finally smiled faintly. Okay. This youth will definitely have a bright future. Chapter 937. By the time Xiao Su finished dealing with the military affairs, the full moon was already hanging high in the sky. He summoned someone to ask and found out that the little fellow was still awake. He muttered to himself for a moment, then took his coat and walked towards her courtyard. As soon as he entered, he was greeted with a dark face and a few angry gazes like their master. They thought that this was called being united against a common enemy. What followed was an aggressive denunciation of his crimes. Big Ice Cube, tell me honestly, how did you steal my man? Xiao Su couldn't help but laugh at this angry look, but he knew that laughing in this kind of situation would undoubtedly add fuel to the fire for her. He restrained his smile and sat down in front of her. Persuaded. I don't believe you. She raised her eyebrows. Jean Xian had been by her side for so many years, and she still didn't understand him. Although he usually didn't speak much, once he set his mind on something, even 9 bulls couldn't pull him back, so it was harder than ascending to heaven to persuade him. But in just 2 hours, he came to find her and said that he was willing to join the army. This made her very surprised, and she couldn't understand how he changed his mind in just one afternoon. After glutinous rice ball and the others were detoxified, they directly jumped into their master's room and cried, "Whoa!" They complained about the hardships of the past few days, and then refused to leave. At this time, when they heard their master's words, they also howled at Xiao Su, protesting for their master. Xiao Su understood one thing, and that was, the kind of master raised the kind of pet. He smiled faintly and said, because under my persuasion, he felt that joining the army was more meaningful than staying by your side. I don't understand. She shook her head, and finally couldn't hide her curiosity and excitement. She grabbed his hand and asked, hurry up and teach me, so that I can steal your man in the future. Xiao Su smiled. Did she still need to steal his man? Everything he had was hers. Reason with reason and move with emotion. He threw out these 8 words. Only a ghost would believe that. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes, expressing her serious doubts. Xiao Su shook his head and laughed. Didn't you support him to go out and try his luck? If you can't bear to part with him, I won't take him away from you. Chu Qingyan quickly waved her hands. That's not what I meant. I was just lying to you. I'm not reluctant. Logically speaking, he's not the kind of person who changes his mind easily. So I'm curious. What did you say to him? Jean Xian is a rare talent. He won't lose to any of the generals on the battlefield. As long as he is given the chance, he will perform brilliantly. After all, I am the one who brought him here. I have confidence in him. She knew that this was a time when the 3 armies needed people. She would not be so selfish. She also did not want to bury him. She respected his choice, whether it was for public or private reasons. Xiao Su's eyes shone brightly, and his tone carried a hint of joy. Ian, perhaps in the future, Jean Xian will bring you a surprise. Of course. She did not notice that he had changed the topic. She raised her head slightly and said proudly, that's why I'm handing him over to you. You have to train him well. It's okay to suffer hardships, but he can't be wronged. Of course, I also believe that he can do it well. All right. Xiao Su looked at her bright and beautiful smile. He really wanted time to stop at this moment, without the sword shadows in front of him, without the soldiers shedding blood in the future. He knew how important Jean Xian was to the little fellow, but he had to do this. He had to train a reserve force that belonged to her, so that she could stand firm in the future. Because at this moment, he could already foresee the storm of blood that would follow. If it wasn't for the appearance of the spy in the three armies, he would not have thought of using the people around her. There were dangers lurking around them. Some had already revealed their tales, and some were still deeply hidden. He had to prepare in advance to guard against all the sudden changes in the future. The two of them talked for a while. Chu Qingyan felt sleepy and drank the medicine. Under Xiao Su's watch, she fell asleep. Xiao Su sat by her side and accompanied her for a while until a subordinate came to report. He got up and gave some instructions to Glutinous Rice Ball and the others before leaving the room. When Xiao Su returned to the study, Hualing had already handed over the list of generals of the three armies. Master, this book is filled with the background of the generals of the three armies, as well as detailed information about their promotions and assignments. Xiao Su casually flipped through a few pages. What did you find? As Master expected, other than the old generals that you brought out, the others are all embroidered pillows. To be able to sit in this position, they either relied on nepotism or bought it with money. In these past few years, they have not done a single proper thing. The military power and the lives of the entire country's people are placed in their hands. This is truly shocking and infuriating. Hualing angrily spoke. He was so angry that his voice trembled. It was not only for the common people, but also for the brothers that fought side by side with him. Now, the number of embroidered pillows represented the number of brothers that these people had left behind. How could he not be angry? Xiao Su's eyes were deep as he closed the book. At the beginning, he was ordered by his imperial father to use the name of mining to root out corrupt officials. He originally thought that corruption and abuse of power mostly occurred in the capital and other places. He did not think that the situation at the border would be this serious. His imperial father, did he know to what extent the foundation of the world had been eroded? N, how is your investigation of these people going? Have you made any progress? Seeing his master's unfathomable expression, Hualing put away his emotions and reported his findings. Master, at present, most of the generals have been ruled out. There are still 5 people that this subordinate is not sure about, so I have ordered people to closely monitor them. Well done. We will take action soon. At that time, we can follow the vine to the melon and find the mole. Xiao Su nodded and continued, currently, there is one thing I need you to do. Master, please give the order. Hualing immediately replied. Announce to the outside that the 3 armies have been poisoned and that it will take some time to recover. Xiao Su said. Hualing understood tacitly. Master wanted to use this to make the enemy relax their vigilance. He immediately responded with a smile, this subordinate will do it now. Xiao Su planned to walk back to the table. At this time, Hualing, who had walked to the door, remembered something and turned back. Master, the left minister sent someone to deliver a letter. This subordinate forgot to give it to you today. He took out the letter and handed it over. Xiao Su raised a brow. He took it and opened it. Reading 10 lines at a glance, he quickly scanned the contents. His lips curled into a mocking curve as he said coldly, he wants Ben Wang to arrange for his people to enter the army camp. Hualing's expression became angry when he heard this. Left Minister Darren knows that this place is already in deep water and still sends people to cause trouble for you. This is too much. Xiao Su casually threw the letter into the lantern. Watching the letter burn in the fire, his tone was calm as he said, no need to pay attention to it. Just focus on the war. He was not a chess piece in their hands. He would not let them control him without a temper. Hualing nodded heavily when he heard this. Chapter 938. The next morning, Chu Qingyan was already able to get out of bed and walk around. She had developed a good habit from years of practicing martial arts. Even if she was sick or injured, she would always wake up at that time. Thus, when the sun had just risen, she was already walking around the courtyard, accompanied by a few pets. Because Xiaohai had brought back the herbs in time and saved the lives of Bai Yutang and the others, they were obedient in front of Xiaohai and didn't quarrel with him. She wanted to laugh when she saw Xiaohai holding his head high and the other three humbly following behind him. At this moment, a few soldiers entered the courtyard, carrying baskets and bags. They walked up to her. "Little brother Chu, these things were sent here by the people of the city. They said they want to nourish your body and repay you for saving their lives," one of the soldiers said with a simple and honest smile. Chu Qingyan was a little surprised. Her gaze fell on the baskets. There were eggs, duck eggs, vegetables, melons, and chickens and ducks. Her gaze softened. "You can return these things. Tell them that I appreciate their kindness, but I can't accept these things." The soldiers looked at each other awkwardly. One of them said, "Little brother Chu, the people ran away faster than rabbits after stuffing these things to our brothers. I'm afraid it'll be difficult for us to find them." Chu Qingyan was also in a difficult position. At this moment, a voice sounded in the courtyard. "Put these things in the kitchen. We can't let down the people's good intentions." The soldiers heaved a sigh of relief when they heard this and sent the things to the kitchen. Chu Qingyan turned to look at the person who had suddenly appeared. She said helplessly, "That's not very good." Qingyan Luo walked up to her and said calmly, "What's not very good about it? You're injured now. If you don't nurse your body back to health, how can you kill more enemies on the battlefield?" She patted Chu Qingyan's shoulder and said earnestly, "You deserve it. From now on, they'll have to rely on you to protect them. The sooner you recover, the sooner you can rid the people of evil." This fallacious reasoning is quite convincing. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but laugh. Qingyan Luo rolled her eyes at him. Chu Qingyan quickly changed the topic. "Why you here so early? How can it not be early? The moment you woke up, your big ice cube sent someone to wake me up. I'm a doctor, not a maid." Qingyan Luo rolled her eyes even more. She pursed her lips and smiled. "Big Ice Cube might be worried about my injuries. I'm fine here. Do you want to go back and sleep?" Qingyan Luo waved her hand. Forget it. I'll just take it that I owe you guys for the rest of my life. Ever since I met you guys, I've been homeless. I can't eat or sleep well. I'm used to it. Why does it sound so sad?" Back then, who was the one who didn't want to be separated and kept following us? Chu Qingyan said with a smile. Now that the truth had been exposed, Qingyan Luo reached out to pinch her cheeks angrily. Hey. Respect the old and cherish the young. Yes. You have to love me because I'm young." Chu Qingyan rescued her pitiful cheeks from Qingyan Luo's hands and said sarcastically. Qingyan Luo felt very defeated. Usually, she couldn't beat her in a fight. Now that she was injured, she couldn't win against her with words. The two of them sat down in the courtyard. Qingyan Luo looked at the artificial mountains, bridges, and rivers in the courtyard and sneered. The prefectural governor's manor is so luxurious and grand. It's obvious that this official has taken a lot of money from the people. Chu Qingyan scanned the surroundings. The scenery was indeed beautiful. She said indifferently, the prefectural governor of Jiangning County is a member of the Fu family. Just because he's from the capital, he's been arrogant and domineering in the past 3 years. He's a treacherous eunuch. How can there be peace when treacherous officials rule? Qingyan Luo was surprised. Speaking of which, how do you know so much? Chu Qingyan smiled. Over the past few years in Lianqing, I've been collecting interesting stories about the local customs and customs of the Sichuan. When I'm bored, I'll listen to these stories. She said it so casually as if it was easy to do, but Qingyan Luo knew that she had taken the trouble to remember these things so that she could use them one day for Xiao Su. She didn't know what she might need, so she did everything she could think of that would be useful. There were so many cities and so many officials in the Sichuan, but she could mention them so casually. It was obvious that she had put in a lot of effort. This made Qingyan Luo feel heartfelt admiration. Little girl, there's something that I haven't been able to figure out. What is it? Ask away. Chu Qingyan could vaguely sense the seriousness in Qing Yanluo's tone. She dismissed the idea of teasing her and asked seriously, "What do you think is the most important thing when two people are together?" Qing Yanluo's eyes were filled with confusion. She hadn't expected it to be related to this. Chu Qingyan smiled calmly and said, "Then what do you think is not important?" Qing Yanluo was speechless. Chu Qingyan smiled and tilted her head to look at her. She said gently, "Actually, when two people decide to be together, there are many things that can't be determined if they are important or not at a specific time." Qing Yanluo was deep in thought. Chu Qingyan smiled faintly as she turned to look at the peach tree that had already borne small fruits. Slowly, she said, "In my opinion, the most important thing is actually each other. Mutual respect, mutual trust, and mutual reliance are more important than anything else. Because no matter the time, these three things will work out for each other. Mutual respect, mutual trust, mutual reliance," Qing Yanluo recited silently in her heart. Then she laughed self-deprecatingly. "Little girl, why does every ordinary sentence sound so philosophical when it comes from your mouth? Because I can turn something rotten into something magical." Chu Qingyan flattered herself without holding back. Qing Yanluo snorted. This time, it was Chu Qingyan's turn to ask a question. "Speaking of which, you're not the kind of artistic youth who is sentimental. What's wrong with you today? Don't tell me you're still entangled with your brother Kong?" Qing Yanluo's face stiffened and she hurriedly denied it. "This has nothing to do with him. Don't think too much. Now that you mention it, I'm thinking more about it. Speaking of which, haven't you thought through many things? Why haven't you looked for him to undo the knot?" Chu Qingyan looked at her curiously. "He's been busy with detoxifying the entire city recently. Moreover, after knowing that the luosha poison is infectious, he's been studying the toxicity of the luosha poison day and night. Where would he find the time?" At the mention of ethereal, Qing Yanluo's expression softened. This didn't escape Chu Qingyan's eyes. She couldn't help but smile. "Time and tide wait for no man. You have to work hard and try to undo the knot between the two of you as soon as possible. If you don't like each other, then let go of the speedboat. If you still have feelings for each other, then don't let go of each other's hands. Otherwise, when you're old, you'll only be dreaming of the past in the middle of the night." Chu Qingyan placed her hand on the back of Qing Yanluo's hand and nodded gently with a smile. "Why don't you look like a 15 or 16-year-old girl?" "Because I'm smart and mature. Love requires tolerance and courage. Yanluo, please have the courage to take this first step." Chu Qingyan prayed silently in her heart. Chapter 939. Because her main task at this stage was to recuperate, all the work at hand was shared by Big Ice Cube. However, to suddenly become idle from a busy state, Chu Qingyan was very uncomfortable. So after having breakfast with Qing Yanluo, she had nothing to do, so she decided to go to the study to look for him. When she entered the study, she saw Big Ice Cube frowning slightly as he read the official documents. She didn't disturb him, but chose to tiptoe to the bookshelf at the side, intending to find a book to pass the time. "You're injured, so you should rest. You shouldn't read these tiresome books." When she came in, he had already noticed it, but he was analyzing a case book in his hand, so he let her find a place to squat. When he saw what she was holding, he couldn't help but remind her. Chu Qingyan looked at the cover. Although it was a bit profound, it didn't mean that she couldn't do anything after being injured. She couldn't help but protest. "Big Ice Cube, think about it. Don't you think it's too pitiful for a fish that's used to swimming to stay still and its nature is restrained?" "You mean you've become a fish now?" After reading the letters for the whole morning, Xiao Su felt a dull headache. Coincidentally, the little fellow came and talked to her to relax. When he heard her theory, he couldn't help but find it funny and asked half-jokingly. Chu Qingyan glanced at him and decided not to discuss this topic with him. She planned to bury her head in the sea of books, but when she lowered her head, she suddenly thought of something. She touched her chin and looked at him doubtfully. "Big Ice Cube, there's something I find very strange. Not many people should know that I went out of the city to look for the antidote herbs. How come it's only been a day and the people in the city know? Could it be that it's the work of a spy? Xiao Su smiled when he heard this. He knew that the people sent fruits and vegetables today. No need to guess, I asked Huoling and the others to do it. Ah? People want to do good deeds silently without leaving a name. She expressed her surprise. You don't need to know the reason. The most important thing now is for you to recover from your injuries. Xiao Su's eyes flashed with a dark light, which was hidden in the depths of his eyes without leaving a trace. Even if I don't say anything, Little C's return with the eagles should have caused quite a stir. If you want to know, you can ask around. She thought that Big Ice Cube had his reasons for doing things. It didn't matter if she didn't know. If anyone in this world could harm her, only her parents and Big Ice Cube wouldn't. She firmly believed this. Xiao Su looked at her trusting eyes, and the corners of his mouth curled up a little. But when he thought of the purpose of doing this, his lips couldn't help but purse into a line. In the past few days, when the other soldiers reported the situation to the imperial court, they more or less mentioned the little fellow. In addition, the little fellow was already a little famous in Lian City. His father, the emperor, had been indirectly asking about the little fellow in his letters these days. This made him feel a little uncomfortable. Imperial father was suspicious. The matter of the little fellow dressing up as a man would be exposed sooner or later. If it came to the end, then he would spread the news of the little fellow's deeds and give her prestige among the people. At that time, even if the people in the court wanted to touch her, they would have to consider the opinions of the people. This way, she would have an extra layer of protection. But these matters were left to him to deal with. She didn't need to know so much at this time. She had already taken on a heavy responsibility that she shouldn't have taken on at her age, so he didn't want to add more burden to her. Although Xiao Su took away her military affairs, she still had to take care of the business in Jiangnan. So, Chu Qingyan coaxed and pestered Xiao Su until he finally agreed to add an extra table in his study. One person handled the military affairs, and the other handled the accounts. They didn't interfere with each other, but they were very harmonious. However, in another corner, they didn't interfere with each other, but they met domineeringly. Half an hour ago. After hearing Chu Qingyan's words, Qingyan Luo suddenly felt a burst of courage in her heart. After leaving the courtyard, she turned around and walked towards the courtyard where the wounded were treated. However, she didn't find anyone. When she learned that Ethereal went out to the west of the city early in the morning with a medicine box, she rushed there without stopping. It had been a long time since she had the urge to appear in front of someone immediately. She was anxious, but at the same time, she felt as if her heart was enveloped by a ball of warm light, filling her up. Ever since he left in a hurry that year, she hadn't experienced this kind of sweet and sour expectation. Because there were soldiers patrolling everywhere in the city, she asked around. However, everywhere she went, she was told that he had already left. Little by little, she found out about his whereabouts. The desire to see him grew stronger and stronger. It was as if she had returned to that year, when she searched the entire sect just to ask him about the use of a medicinal herb. She dashed through the crowd, searching for alleys. She was like a butterfly, fluttering non-stop. The sun's scorching rays shone on her body, causing her whole body to emit steam. She felt her cheeks burning, but she didn't care. At this time, she was standing at a crossroad, hesitating about which direction to go. Suddenly, she heard a clear child's voice. Brother Ethereal, you said that this herb has the effect of clearing heat and detoxifying poison, right? Then can I bring it home and cook it for my mother? You can. The clear voice of the wind was like a clear spring, bringing a trace of coolness to this hot and dry weather. Qingyan Luo suddenly turned her head. In the corner of a dilapidated wall, she saw a person bending down to explain the effects of medicinal herbs to a child. Although in this dilapidated landscape, he was dressed in plain clothes without any ornaments. But in her eyes, he was more dazzling than when he was dressed in fine clothes. This one glance made her feel as if she had returned to the past. In those years when she was in the sect, medical practitioners, especially those who advocated doing good deeds, were generally charitable. They rarely collected medical fees. They didn't collect money from the poor, the lonely, the old, the weak, and the disabled. As a result, They lived in poverty for those few years. But they didn't care about food and clothing. As long as they ate enough and wore warm clothes, whether it was simple tea and simple meals or coarse linen clothes, they lived comfortably and contentedly. This scene evoked the buried memories in her heart. She couldn't help but walk towards him. When she was 3 steps behind him, she came back to her senses. But at this time, she didn't have the slightest intention of shrinking back. Time waits for no man. She didn't know when she would have this kind of courage again. "Brother Ethereal, there's a beautiful big sister looking at you." The child pointed behind Ethereal and smiled innocently. Ethereal was still focused on the herb. Hearing the child's words, he was puzzled. Then he turned around and looked in the direction of the child's finger. Under the plain clothes and flowers, there was a clear gaze. He stood in place, stunned. "Little Yen." Chapter 940. She couldn't help but call out softly. Surprise, delight, and excitement flashed across Ethereal's eyes. However, a gust of wind blew over, dispersing the gentleness in his eyes and taking away the warmth from his body. She was about to walk up to him, but when she met his distant and cold gaze, she stopped in her tracks. She had clearly felt his joy when he saw her, but in the blink of an eye, it had turned into an illusion. "Xiaoyan, what are you doing here?" Ethereal smiled faintly. His tone wasn't warm, as though he had met an ordinary friend. There were many things she wanted to say, but at this moment, she felt as though someone was strangling her throat. She couldn't utter a single word. She pursed her lips and quickly said, "I heard from them that you were here for a volunteer medical consultation. I was afraid that you would be too busy, so I came out to take a look. Anyway, I have nothing better to do." Ethereal's gaze swept across her empty hands. He knew that she was lying. After interacting with her for so long, whenever she lied, her right thumb and index finger would subconsciously pinch her left index finger. Although he didn't know why she would make up such a lie, he wouldn't expose her, just like in the past. "It's about time. We can go back after visiting one more clinic. If you have something to do, you can go ahead." He still smiled politely. Cheng Yanluo was stunned. Her pupils constricted. Something seemed to be wrong. Yes, the way he looked at her just now wasn't as affectionate as before. There was only coldness, as though he was talking to a familiar stranger. Why did he suddenly become like this? She couldn't figure it out. At this moment, Ethereal was about to turn around and leave. In a moment of impulse, she rushed in front of him and blocked his way. "Xiaoyan, is there anything else?" Ethereal's eyes flashed with surprise, but he quickly calmed down. "I have something to say to you." She ignored the unfamiliarity that Ethereal gave her and mustered the courage to look him in the eye. Ethereal looked away. "Okay, go ahead." She opened her mouth, but it was as if she was stuck. She didn't know where to start. "If it's not important, we can talk about it next time." Ethereal had a feeling that what she wanted to say would change the decision he made in the past few days. After saying this, he did not hesitate to walk past her. "It's very important," she said hurriedly. He stopped in his tracks. She walked back to him and raised her head. Her eyes were filled with determination. "Murong, I've thought about a lot of things while I was with the army. I thought about our days in the sect. I thought about you telling me that you were going to leave. I thought about the years I spent alone after you left. I've been thinking about these memories over the past few years when you weren't around. At that time, every time I thought about it, I hated you. I felt that you were the one who destroyed our beautiful past and our hopes for the future with your own hands. But now, I'm thinking about how you've been living without me by your side for the past few years." When she said this, tears flashed in her eyes. She closed her eyes. When she opened her mouth to speak, she suddenly realized that it wasn't that difficult to express her thoughts. She let go of her tense emotions and continued speaking calmly. "After going through these battles, I realized that you've been living a hard life these past few years. It hasn't been easy. I can understand how you felt when you made this decision. Only when a person was in a situation could they truly think from another's perspective. If it was me, perhaps I would have made the same decision as you. But you're more righteous than I am, more responsible than I am. Although I've resented you and hated you for so many years, at this time, I realize that personal love and hate are far too insignificant when compared to family, country, world, life and death. Kong Ling looked at her in astonishment. He never thought that he would hear such words from her mouth. He thought that he would never hear such words again in his life. His heart was like a surging wave, tumbling, surging violently into his entire heart. She looked at him with self-reproach. I'm sorry. I'm too selfish. I'm still living in the past. I don't want to break free and live a good life with you. I only think about my own grievances. Although I can't forgive you for abandoning me back then, at this moment, I don't want to lie to myself anymore. She paused when she said this, and her empty heart suddenly jumped. She stared at her. In the years when you weren't around, I never stopped thinking about you. In the years when we were reunited, I never let go of my feelings for you. These two sentences were like violent thunder exploding in his ears. He felt as if his legs were floating, as if he was dreaming. It turned out that Xiao Yan was just like him. His heart was enveloped by a warm current, and he was wild with joy. He moved his lips, wanting to say something, but the words seemed to be stuck in his throat. A thought appeared in his mind, instantly extinguishing this warm current and freezing it into ice. At this moment, Qing Yanluo didn't notice the change in his expression. She gathered the remaining courage in her heart and threw caution to the wind. Murong, I want to give our future a chance to start afresh. Are you willing to do it? She gathered what little courage she had left and said these words with difficulty and straightforwardness. She knew that most women were too shy to boldly express their love, but she never felt that taking the initiative was wrong. If she felt that this person was the only one in this life, it didn't matter if she lost a little face. She could make him lose it back in the future and call it even. However, these words seemed to dissipate in the air. They were silent and didn't receive any response. She couldn't help but look up at him. What greeted her eyes was his calm and cold appearance. Her heart subconsciously clenched. At this moment, she heard him speak. Xiaoyan, I'm very surprised, but at the same time, I'm very happy that you're so honest with me. Thank you for understanding me. She stared at him fixedly. But I'm very sorry. I might not be able to continue being with you. Ethereal lowered his eyes and didn't look at her. He said each word slowly and unhurriedly. He felt as if his heart was being cut into pieces, but on the surface, he still looked calm and composed. She widened her eyes in disbelief. When a person no longer wants to spend the rest of their life with another person, what do you think is the reason? Ethereal didn't answer her question directly. Because he didn't love her anymore. Cheng Yanluo bit her lip and looked at him with reddened eyes. Do you mean that I don't have a place in your heart anymore? Yes, he replied with pursed lips. In an instant, the world fell apart. She couldn't see anything else in front of her anymore. Only his words echoed clearly and resolutely in her ears. Time has worn away my feelings for you. I can't continue being with you. I'm sorry, Xiaoyan. I'm sorry, Xiaoyan. He said sorrowfully in his heart. Chapter 941. Murong, do you know what you're saying? Cheng Yanluo looked at him and murmured. Disbelief was written all over her face. Ethereal felt as if a knife had been twisted in his heart when he heard her sorrowful question. However, he heard his own cold and heartless reply. Xiao Yan, although I've been very guilty of hurting you these past few years, I've traveled extensively these past few years. I rarely think about those days when we were in the sect. My impression of you is still stuck in the past. After so many years, we've both changed. I'm no longer the eldest senior brother in your heart. In the past, I was merciful when I practiced medicine to save people. Now, my hands are stained with blood. I've already broken the oath I made to the sect. If we still treat each other as the one in our memories, then we'll live a very painful life. If that's the case, why don't we let go of each other as soon as possible? Cheng Yanluo couldn't help but take 2 steps back. She felt as if she was about to lose her balance. She finally mustered up the courage to take a step toward him, but this was the response she got. I don't remember the past anymore. You're no longer the person I like. We walk different paths, so we can't work together. After saying so much, he just wanted to express this cruel meaning. She felt as if countless tiny needles were pricking her heart. It was so painful that she felt numb. If she had been the same as before, she would have slapped him and turned to leave, leaving him with a cool and unrestrained back view. However, at this moment, her feet seemed to be nailed to the ground. She wanted to turn around, but she couldn't. In front of outsiders, she was so resolute, so strong, and so indifferent. However, it was because the person who hurt her didn't matter to her. However, in front of her lover, the sturdy armor was like a bubble that would burst at the slightest touch. Then, after so many years, why are you still so concerned about me? She looked at him in a daze. There was a voice in her heart that told her to turn around and leave. That way, her heart wouldn't hurt anymore. However, she still wanted to ask. She wasn't afraid of losing face. She just wanted to know the truth. It's because I feel like I owe you something. I wasted your youth and didn't make you happy. Instead, I made you sad again and again. I blame myself, so I want to make it up to you. He looked into her eyes and apologized sincerely. Cheng Yanluo chuckled as if she found it funny. She seemed to be mocking herself. Her voice trembled as she looked at him sadly. Murong, do you think I'm the kind of person who needs others to make it up to me? You know what I want. Her eyes were too clear, so clear that he could clearly see the unreserved love in them. He didn't dare to look directly into her eyes, so he looked away and advised her. Yen, don't always live in the past. It'll be very painful. I've already gotten over it. I hope you can start over too. Could. But the person was clearly the same person, but she couldn't understand a single word that came out of his mouth. Don't panic, Yanluo. Ask him clearly. She held his hand tightly. Cut off all paths of retreat, disregarding everything else. Murong, I only have one question for you. He looked at her. If my heart was still the same, would you still want me? Ethereal's eyes were gloomy. The sun was so dazzling that it made one's eyes ache. Xiaoyan, I'm sorry. He didn't know what else to say. Cheng Yanluo looked up at the scorching sun. Her mind was in a daze. Was the sun so bright that she was hallucinating? Or was she in a dream? Why was it like this? I don't want to hear your apology. You didn't do anything wrong. What you've heard today, just treat it as a moment of confusion on my part. After today, just forget about it. She no longer knew what kind of mood she should have when facing him. Xiaoyan, the battlefield isn't as simple as you think. Go back to Jiangnan. Okay. When Qingyan recovers, I won't stay and be an eyesore to you. His heart finally relaxed, but the bitterness in his mouth was unbearable. He pursed his lips and continued to smile. Although we can't be lovers, you're still my junior sister. You're my closest friend in this world. She looked at him again, the light in her eyes disappearing bit by bit. There was no greater sorrow than a dead heart. She tried to smile. If we can't help each other in times of need, let's forget about each other. If the current her wasn't immersed in immense pain, she would have noticed the trembling and emptiness in the voice of the person in front of her. She would have also noticed the blood flowing from the wounds on the hands that were tightly gripping the medicinal herbs. He tried his best to smile back at her. Cheng Yanluo smiled faintly, but there was no joy in her eyes. She turned around and walked down the busy street like a ghost. Although there was a lot of noise around her, she felt as if all the noise had faded away. She was the only one left in this world. Little girl, I've tried my best, but he doesn't care about me anymore. The tears that she had been holding back finally flowed down her face. Kong Ling watched as her figure slowly disappeared into the sea of people. The smile on his face disappeared bit by bit, and the pain he felt was like an endless darkness shrouding him. He felt someone tugging at his sleeve. He looked down. It was the child from earlier. You're not home yet? I'll be home soon. Brother Ethereal, don't you like that beautiful sister? The child asked curiously. No, I like her very much. He smiled sadly. Then why did you say those hurtful words to that beautiful sister? The child was puzzled. Because I want to protect her. I want to keep her away from danger. Although he was against it when she was with the army, he couldn't deny that his heart was at peace with her by his side. He didn't have any fear on the line between life and death. However, when they were trapped in the Southern Song army while picking herbs this time, he recognized a fact very clearly. If she continued to stay here, her life would be in danger and he wouldn't be able to protect her. This picking of herbs was a wake-up call for him. He wouldn't be so lucky to escape every time. He had to harden his heart and push her away, even if it was against his will. "Brother, I don't understand." The child scratched his head. At this moment, thunder rumbled and dark clouds covered the sky. He raised his hand and patted the child's head. "You'll understand when you grow up. But I hope you won't experience this pain. It's going to rain. Go back quickly." The child smiled and nodded. Then he jogged away. But before he entered the alley, he turned back to look at that handsome big brother. The child felt that this big brother seemed to be very sad, very sad. Ethereal's footsteps were light as he walked aimlessly in the opposite direction of her. The pitter-patter of rain fell from the sky and landed on his body. The raindrops stuck to his eyelashes like sparkling and translucent tears. "Xiao Yan, this time, there's no turning back." Chapter 942. In the blink of an eye, the rain had turned into a downpour. Chu Qingyan listened to the rumbling thunder outside the window. Her heart trembled with fear as she watched the rain fall outside. When Xiao Su put down the letter in his hand, he saw her frowning. "What's wrong?" "I heard that Yen Luo went out alone in the afternoon and never came back. I'm a little worried." The heavy rain drifted in. She reached out to close the window to block out the noise outside. Then she walked to the side and sat down. "She went to look for Ethereal?" Xiao Su raised his brows. Chu Qingyan blinked. "How did you know?" "It's a normal deduction." He pointed a finger at his head and lightly said, "This morning, Kong Ling came to invite you to go out for a volunteer medical consultation and I allowed it. Miss Ching usually doesn't leave the house, so if you suddenly go out, you'll know the answer." He had guessed it based on these small details. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but feel impressed. She propped her chin up with one hand and said, "I heard from the soldiers that Yen Luo was looking for Ethereal in a hurry. I wasn't worried at first, but when I saw the rain outside, I was a little worried. These two are older than you and have eaten more salt than you have rice. You don't have to worry about them," Xiao Su said casually. Although she said that, she didn't know why, but she still felt worried. A soldier came in, but Xiao Su didn't have time to care about her. He continued to work. Chu Qingyan sat for a while longer, but she could no longer continue reading the book in her hand. She closed the book and summoned a soldier in. "Are Ethereal and Yen Luo back?" "Mr. Ethereal is back, but Miss Ching isn't back yet," the soldier replied. "What?" Chu Qingyan stood up in shock. Ethereal was back, so why wasn't she back yet? She seemed to have thought of something. She didn't have time to tell Big Ice Cube and immediately left. Thunder rumbled outside, and the rain seemed to be getting heavier. The pitter-patter of raindrops that were as big as beans smashed against the eaves as if they were hitting her heart. She couldn't help but recall what she had said to Yen Luo this morning. She wondered what had happened between the two of them when Yen Luo went to look for Ethereal. She couldn't care less. She summoned people to look for Yen Luo and informed Ethereal. She was unfamiliar with this place, so where could she go? Just as she was about to lead her men out of the door, a figure appeared in the misty rain. Chu Qingyan sucked in a deep breath when she saw the person who was slowly walking over. Raindrops rolled down his black hair, and his clothes were soaked, but he didn't realize it. He wandered around like a walking corpse. His eyes were lifeless, as if he had lost his soul. It was as if he had lost all signs of life. Chu Qingyan couldn't believe that the person in front of her was the lively woman who had quarreled with her this morning. Cheng Yenluo walked on in a daze. She had no idea where she was. She only knew that she had walked for a long time, but she couldn't find the end. It was just like her feelings for Murongju. When they were in love, or when they were separated, she couldn't find him. She couldn't figure out his thoughts, so she had been in a state of disappointment for so long. She didn't even know when he fell in love with her and when he lost his feelings for her. There had always been a vast fog between them, so she could never see him clearly. For so many years, she had been looking for him all the time. When she couldn't find him, she was helpless. When she found him, she was afraid that he would disappear again. He suddenly turned around and walked through the fog to stand in front of her. Although we can't be lovers, you're still my junior sister. You're my closest friend in this world. Women were insecure. In fact, as long as the other party gave them a promise, they would feel at ease. However, he had never been willing to give her this promise. When she heard him say that, she seemed to have found the answer. It turned out that his feelings for her were like rainwater. No matter how sentimental it was when it fell from the sky, it would fall apart when it hit the ground, leaving nothing behind. At this moment, the rain that fell on her body had lessened. She couldn't help but look up at the person in front of her. She smiled gently. "Little girl, I listened to you and told him." At this moment, Chu Qingyan was holding an umbrella to shield the two of them. Seeing her in such a sorry state, her heart ached. "You're very brave." Cheng Yenluo smiled and said, "But he said that he doesn't want me anymore." Chu Qingyan was stunned. How could this be? However, no matter how many questions she had, she couldn't help but tear up when she saw her smiling brightly even though she was obviously heartbroken. "Yenlu, don't smile. If you're sad, cry it out. I think I've been crying for a whole day. There are no more tears left." She laughed and laughed until tears came out of her eyes. She couldn't help but lean closer to Chu Qingyan's shoulder and hug her. She said softly, "Little girl, my heart hurts so much." After saying this, she couldn't help but burst into tears. A wave of sadness filled Chu Qingyan's heart. What kind of emotional pain could cause such a strong and independent girl to be in such pain? "Yenluo, it's my fault. I shouldn't have asked you to look for ethereal." Seeing her like this, Chu Qingyan's heart was filled with guilt as she blamed herself. She hugged Chu Qingyan tightly, and when she felt Chu Qingyan's cold body shiver, her heart started to ache. Cheng Yenluo shook her head. Her voice was sad and hoarse. "No one is wrong. No one did anything wrong. It's just that we're not fated to be together. When we met at the right time, we didn't make good use of it. Yenluo, don't be sad. I'll get Big Ice Cube to stand up for you and teach Ethereal a lesson. He'll apologize to you. Don't be sad, okay?" Chu Qingyan gently patted her back and comforted her gently. Cheng Yenluo shook her head again. "Little girl, I'm afraid that I won't be able to love anyone anymore." Her voice was sorrowful and hopeless. She sounded like a lost person who had completely given up hope of finding her way back. Chu Qingyan could feel her endless loneliness and sorrow. She was afraid that something would happen to her. She wanted to say something, but her words were stuck in her throat and she couldn't say a word. Love was either honey or poison. Some people would be happy forever, while others would sentence themselves to death. No one else could understand this feeling. In the end, Cheng Yenluo was exhausted from crying. Raindrops fell on her eyelashes, mixing with her crystal-clear tears as they flowed down her cheeks. Warmth and coldness alternated between her cheeks, just like how her body was in a state of ice and fire. When she closed her eyes, she seemed to see a familiar figure standing in front of her. It was so close, yet so far away. "Murong, I won't look for you anymore. It's too tiring." The scariest thing in life wasn't falling in love without knowing where it came from. It was falling in love with no way out and falling into the abyss. "If I could start over, Murong Ju, I wouldn't want to see you again." She smiled gently and tears rolled down her cheeks. Chapter 943. When Ethereal heard that Yenluo hadn't returned, he was worried. He couldn't help but come out to look for her. He happened to see the young princess consort standing with her and felt relieved. He steeled his heart and prepared to leave, but when he saw that she had fainted, he rushed to her without hesitation. Chu Qingyan held the umbrella in one hand and couldn't support Yenluo's weight with the other. Just as she was about to call for help, a white figure rushed over and took the person in her arms. When she saw who it was, she instinctively wanted to ask him how he had tortured such a good girl like Yenluo to this extent. However, the current situation didn't allow her to do so. After Ethereal took Yenluo's pulse, he looked shocked. Without another word, he carried Yen Luo into the courtyard. Chu Qingyan knew that something had happened and immediately followed him. Ethereal kicked the door open and said as he walked, "Young princess consort, please prepare some hot water and clean clothes for Yen Luo. She's running a fever." Chu Qingyan immediately turned to instruct the servants to prepare. 15 minutes later, she cleaned Yen Luo's body and changed her into clean clothes. Then, she stood aside and waited for Ethereal to check her pulse. She's been in the rain for too long. Coupled with her unstable emotions, her body is too weak. The cold has invaded her body and she's running a high fever. I'll go and get some medicine and have someone send it over later. I'll have to trouble you to make her drink it. Ethereal retracted his hand and his tightly knitted brows relaxed. He shouldn't appear in front of her at this time. Hence, he took a deep look at the person on the bed and resolutely got up to leave. Chu Qingyan caught the meaning behind his words and frowned. She stood in front of him and suppressed the anger in her heart. "Ethereal, I don't know what happened between you and Yen Luo. I don't know why you treat her so coldly, but I have to tell you that she became like this because of you. Don't you feel guilty seeing her so haggard lying here?" Ethereal lowered his eyes. "Young princess consort, this is between me and Yen Luo. Did he mean for her to stay out of this?" Upon hearing this, Chu Qingyan was infuriated. Her suppressed anger suddenly erupted. Yes, this is between the two of you. I shouldn't meddle in this. But Yen Luo is my friend, a friend that I treat with sincerity. I feel sad and distressed to see her go from being full of vitality to such a sorrowful state. You've known her for so long. Let's not talk about now. In the past, the two of you were in love with each other and admired each other. Even if this feeling disappeared, the feelings of the past were still there, right? Can you just abandon her without any guilt and watch her suffer from the pain of her illness? Ethereal, how can you bear to do this? Ethereal silently endured the young consort's reproach. After she finished speaking, his expression was still calm. He slowly said, "Young consort, this subordinate feels that it is better to end the pain quickly than to prolong the pain. Instead of continuing to cause chaos, it is better to be as calm as water and never meet again." Chu Qingyan couldn't help but widen her eyes. Was this person still ethereal? Was this the ethereal who had wholeheartedly sacrificed for Yen Luo behind her back? "Ethereal, you..." At this moment, Ethereal bowed in the direction of the door. "Master." Chu Qingyan turned her head and saw the person standing in the room. She couldn't help but vent her anger on him. Discipline your subordinate yourself. Abandoning her after seducing her and toying with her feelings. Stubborn and unrepentant. Xiao Su frowned slightly and said disapprovingly, "Ian, watch your words." Chu Qingyan knew that she had misspoken, but she was still in a fit of anger. She gritted her teeth and turned to take care of Yen Luo. Xiao Su glanced at the angry little fellow, then his gaze finally landed on Ethereal. "Come out with me." Ethereal acknowledged and turned to look at the person lying on the bed. Then he called for a doctor in the city to get some medicine and followed his master out. It was raining cats and dogs outside. Rainwater poured down from the eaves like a waterfall, separating the quiet and the bustling world into two different worlds. Ethereal followed Xiao Su down the long corridor. The sound of the rain falling and the bustling world made one feel incomparably cold and desolate. Xiao Su turned to look at the subordinate in front of him, whom he had never had to worry about. At this moment, his face was dejected and lonely, as if he had lost his soul. "I shouldn't have interfered with your personal affairs, but Ian has always been concerned about the relationship between the two of you. I don't want your matters to affect her recovery." Ethereal was stunned by his blunt words. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. His master was being so straightforward. Couldn't he take his subordinate's feelings into consideration? "Master, he wanted to say something, but the master in front of him raised his hand and stopped him. "I don't know what happened between the two of you, but Ethereal, as a man, you must have the courage to take responsibility. Moreover, if you really care about a person, then treat her well." Usually, Xiao Su often talked about them in official matters, but this was the first time he commented on his subordinate's private affairs. He felt a little strange. But when he thought about how the little fellow was restless because of their matters today, Xiao Su couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. This matter had to be resolved as soon as possible. He didn't want the little fellow to be distracted by someone other than him. Moreover, he couldn't bear to see his subordinate troubled by love and depressed. Hearing this, Kongling was a little surprised that he would one day hear these words from his master's mouth, but he quickly calmed down. He didn't pour out his grievances, but brought up another matter. "Master, do you remember when we were ambushed on the way to the Fu Li mountain range under imperial orders? In order to protect the little princess consort, you sent her away from your side?" Xiao Su nodded. After that, he looked deeply at Ethereal. "You wanted to protect her?" Ethereal sighed softly. His master was so smart. He understood once he said it. He smiled bitterly. "Master, this subordinate didn't want her to be in fear and worry. Her life was in danger, just like how you felt when you sent the little princess consort away." Xiao Su looked at him. "But, Ethereal, have you ever thought about whether the way you sent her away was right? You didn't want her to be hurt, but before her life was in danger, the first person to make her suffer was yourself." Ethereal stood rooted to the ground, stunned. Xiao Su wanted to say more, but he wasn't good at this. He walked in front of Ethereal and patted him on the shoulder. "Think about it carefully. Don't let yourself regret it for the rest of your life." He put down his hand and prepared to leave. At this moment, he heard Ethereal ask with lowered eyes, "Master, why did you change your mind and let the little princess consort stay in the military camp?" These words made Xiao Su stop in his tracks. He looked sideways at the boundless curtain of rain and slowly said, "Maybe she's been gone for too long. She doesn't want to be alone anymore." Xiao Su's eyes darkened. He suddenly wanted to see the little fellow. Chapter 944. His master had already left. At this moment, Ethereal stood in the corridor and turned to look at the misty world. He and Xiaoyan were different from his master and the little princess consort. They had been separated for so many years. If he talked nicely, she might not be willing to leave and return to Jiangnan to wait for him. Instead of giving her hope and disappointing her in the end, it was better to keep her as far away from him as possible. "From now on, as long as you live well in this world, I'll protect you regardless of whether I'm dead or alive." He chuckled softly, as if the rain had drifted in and moistened his eyes. In the room, Chu Qingyan was pacing back and forth, glancing at the door from time to time. When Xiao Su walked in, her eyes lit up, but when she saw that there was no one behind him, her gaze dimmed. "Where's Ethereal?" He went back. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows when he saw the change in her expression. Chu Qingyan was very disappointed. She slammed her hands on the table and exploded in anger. "I was wrong about Ethereal. I didn't expect him to be such an ethereal." Seeing her clap her hands, Xiao Su's handsome face twitched slightly. If Kongling was here at this moment, he would have been slapped in the face. "Look, Yen Luo is such a beautiful and talented girl. She's 1 in 100 in a crowd. How could he hurt her so casually? If he were in the modern world, where there are more men than women, he would be single for the rest of his life." Chu Qingyan was so angry that she spoke without thinking. Fortunately, Xiao Su was focused on her hands and didn't pay attention to her words. "Things have already turned out this way. As outsiders, we can't say anything. Don't think too much," Xiao Su consoled her. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and turned her anger on him. "You men are all trash. To think that we've been so loyal to you and devoted our hearts to you, but this is what we get in return." Xiao Su, who had been wronged, coughed softly and said, "When have I ever treated you like this? Don't overturn the whole boat with one pole. You haven't done that yet. As the saying goes, a crooked stick will have a crooked shadow. Ethereal is your subordinate. Who knows, you might end up like him one day." She could not be angry at Ethereal. After all, he was Big Ice Cube's man. However, Big Ice Cube was her man, so she vented her anger on him. Xiao Su felt very wronged, but when he saw her slightly red eyes, the words of justification swallowed in his throat. In the end, he didn't say anything. Instead, he walked forward and reached out to hug her. It seems like everything I say is wrong. She reached out and pushed his chest. She struggled, but she was not as strong as him. In the end, she gave up. Most of her anger dissipated, and her expression changed to one of helplessness and panic. Big Ice Cube, will you abandon me one day like Ethereal did to Smokey? How did he get dragged into this? Xiao Su was about to scold her for talking nonsense, but when he met her hazy and watery eyes, his voice involuntarily softened. I won't. When we were in Lian City, Ethereal would personally go to the kitchen to tell the cook Smokey's taste. On hot days, he would personally cook mung bean porridge and have someone bring plum soup to her. On cold days, he would carefully ask the servants if the heater in her room was enough. When she went out to play, he would wait until she came back before going to rest. He never let Smokey know about these things. I can tell that Ethereal really likes Smokey, and Smokey also likes Ethereal very much. However, why would Ethereal say that he doesn't want to be with Smokey so easily? The feelings of the past are not smoke. Once the sun comes out, they will vanish in an instant. Humans are more emotional than plants because they have 7 emotions and 6 desires. They have hearts, greed, anger, and foolishness. They can choose to love or be loved. If you can give up on someone you deeply love just like that, wouldn't it be too rash and simple? Is deep love something so cheap? Is it only a matter of a thought to want or not? Chu Qingyan felt more confused than ever as she thought about Ethereal and Smokey. She was a beginner. It was her first time stepping into the field of love. She didn't know how to love someone, how to hold someone's hand for the rest of their life, but she had a vision and followed her heart. However, Yen Luo and Kongling had been together for more than 10 years. Their love was strong, and their hatred was strong. They had been entangled for so long, but their love was no less than Yen Luo and Big Ice Cube's. However, even Kongling could let go of a relationship so easily and push away the person she loved deeply. Yen Luo couldn't help but wonder if love could last forever. Could it guarantee that they would support each other forever? She was at a loss, scared and panicked. Xiao Su could feel the uneasiness of the person in his arms. He frowned and thought to himself, Ethereal and Smokey are really worrisome. He sighed softly and placed a hand on her shoulder. He pulled her out of his arms and straightened her in front of him. Her nose and eyes were red. Although she wasn't crying, she looked like she was on the verge of tears. It was even more worrying. Her pitiful appearance made him want to hold her tightly in his arms. However, he knew that if he didn't answer her today and reassure her, he was afraid that she would hide a knot in her heart when he wanted to be close to the little one in the future. Ian, do you have so little confidence in our relationship? He asked. But she opened her mouth, but her words were stuck. She hesitated and hesitated. Xiao Su sighed. Don't you think it's too rash to deny our relationship over the past few years just because of Ethereal and Smokey? She could hear a hint of loneliness in his words. Chu Qingyan's eyes cleared up a little. She bit her lip and shook her head. He said earnestly, sometimes, what we see with our eyes and hear with our ears isn't necessarily the truth. I believe that Ethereal has his difficulties. Difficulties? What difficulties? She was immediately attracted by these 2 words. Although he knew the reason, Ethereal didn't want others to know. As his master, there was no reason for him to gossip. He blinked his eyes and avoided this topic. Ethereal's feelings for Miss Cheng are unquestionable. However, we are outsiders. Even if we can see more clearly than they can, we can't interfere with them. Time will prove many things. Let them deal with this relationship on their own. This is something that outsiders can't influence. But, no buts. Xiao Su reached out his other hand and caressed her face. His gaze was as gentle as water. I am me, and you are you. My feelings for you are like the radiance of the sun and the moon. It will never change. This confession caught her off guard. While she was still in a daze, a dark shadow loomed over her. Her lips felt warm, and he sucked on them. Then he pried open her lips and teeth, and swept her lips and tongue domineeringly. She couldn't help but close her eyes. She placed her hands on his shoulders and sank with him. Chapter 945. The Sichuan Emperor's Capital. In the splendid palace, a figure was spinning around. At this time, an attendant quickly walked in. "Your Highness, the investigation has been completed. The one injured is indeed the youth Chu Yen by His Royal Highness's side." As soon as the attendant finished speaking, Xiao Ran's expression became anxious. "Where is the injury? Is it serious? How did she get injured?" The attendant couldn't react to this string of questions. "I heard that it was because she fell into the Prince of Nansong's trap, but she escaped in the end." As for the other questions, he looked troubled. This subordinate didn't find out. He only knew that she was injured, but he didn't know whether it was serious or not. Xiao Ran felt like there was a blunt knife in his heart that kept grinding. It didn't want to give him a quick death and just left him hanging like this. He took a step back. His mind was filled with the image of her lying on the bed poisoned because of him. That pale and bloodless face immediately changed. "Arrange for people now. I want to leave the palace." "Your Highness, Consort Yu wants you to stay in the palace for this period of time. It's safer." The attendant was shocked and immediately replied, "I don't care about that anymore. Order people to prepare." Xiao Ran raised his hand, his expression displeased. At this time, a low and gentle voice came from outside the hall. It was cold and sharp. "Rana, where are you going?" "Mother?" Xiao Ran turned and saw his mother leisurely walking in. Her face was still anxious. He went up to greet her. "Mother, I want to leave the palace to help eldest brother." He didn't dare to mention Xingyan's matter for fear that his mother would be angry. But his volunteering to go to the border made Consort Yu unhappy. "You've only been back for a few days and you want to run away. Don't you know the dangers of the battlefield?" Xiao Ran followed beside her. "Imperial Mother, Ai's injuries are almost completely healed. It's all right. In any case, Ai has led troops in so many battles. I can help eldest brother. You've forgotten the pain after the wound healed. Don't forget how you were replaced by someone else and came back with your face completely shamed." At the mention of this matter, Consort Yu was so angry that her liver hurt. During this period of time, she had suffered much from Empress Liang's mockery and ridicule, as well as the people in the imperial harem adding insult to injury. Even His Majesty, in order to show his favor and stabilize Empress Liang's faction, had been staying in Chaiyang Palace recently. As a result, she had to stay alone in her boudoir and endure Empress Liang's smug and flirtatious expression during the day. This made her even angrier. Now, not only did her son not stand on her side to stand up for her, he even wanted to help Xiao Su. She had really raised an ingrate. Xiao Ran's face paled. This matter had always been a knot in his heart. Young and frivolous. Even the most reserved and steady youth could not overcome this obstacle in his heart. All of his pride had been destroyed in his repeated failures. Seeing her son's pale face, Consort Yu's tone couldn't help but soften. "Rana, I heard that recently you've been investigating the people around Xiao Su. Who is worthy of your concern?" Xiao Ran heard this and avoided her gaze. "It's nothing. It's just a friend I knew in the past." "Is that so? Why does Imperial Mother not know that you know that person called Chu Yen?" Consort Yu's gaze turned sharp. Xiao Ran was shocked. Imperial Mother actually knew? The change in Xiao Ran's expression did not escape Consort Yu's eyes. She chuckled. "Who is this person? What is his relationship with Xiao Su? How do you know him?" It's a playmate I knew from eldest brother's side." Xiao Ran couldn't speak fluently. Consort Yu's sharp gaze swept over him and she snorted. "Ranner, Imperial Mother doesn't want you to hide anything from Imperial Mother." Xiao Ran had an embarrassed expression. "Imperial Mother, I won't leave the palace. I'll stay in the palace and not cause any trouble for you." He couldn't persist any longer. Otherwise, if his Imperial Mother suspected that he was investigating Qingyan's identity, it would bring disaster to her. Eldest brother wouldn't be able to escape the responsibility. Consort Yu glanced at him. Her expression didn't change. "You're still the most considerate son. In the following time, study well and learn more about your imperial father's way of governing. It will come in handy in the future." Xiao Ran wanted to refute, but under his imperial mother's gaze, he could only swallow his words. Ranner, you can't get what you want today because you don't stand high enough, don't have enough power, and aren't ruthless enough. When you have everything, what can't you get? Consort Yu seemed to see through his thoughts. Her gaze was like a knife and her voice carried a certain persuasion. Xiao Ran's eyes turned blank. Was it like this? If he had enough power, then wouldn't he have to worry about so much? He could have Qingyan stay by his side without any worries. He wouldn't have to worry about anything, would he? Consort Yu saw that his thoughts were wavering and a trace of a smile appeared on her face. Then she gave him a few instructions before turning and walking out of the palace. On the way back to the palace, Consort Yu's face didn't have any of its previous gentleness. She said to the servant beside her, "Have someone investigate Chu Yan's background." She wouldn't allow any accidents to happen in Ranner's life. Consort Yu walked to the imperial garden and stopped in her tracks. She looked at the fragrant flowers in the garden and curved her lips. "Liang Yuan, I'll let you be smug for a while, but I won't let you be smug forever." In another luxurious and inconspicuous residence in the imperial capital, Xiao Ho held a black stone in his hand and played chess with himself. A subordinate was sitting in front of the bed and reporting. "Master, not long after the eldest prince took control of the army, the prince of Nansong beat him at his own game and caught him off guard. However, for some reason he didn't succeed in the end. If Xiao Su could be defeated so easily, then he wouldn't be the undefeatable god of war of the past." Xiao Ho didn't think much of it. Master is right. However, the Prince of Nansong personally besieged the enemy in the following battle. In the end, it also ended in failure. I heard that he lost to a young strategist by the eldest prince's side. The subordinate continued to report. A young strategist? When Xiao Ho heard this, he couldn't help but frown. Where did this person come from? His name is Chu Qingyan. He was by the eldest prince's side when he was young. We don't know his exact background, but this subordinate has already sent people to investigate. Xiao Ho raised the corner of his mouth, but his expression was unreadable. No need. This prince already knows this person's identity. This subordinate had just been transferred back from another place and wasn't familiar with the people and matters around Xiao Su. Xiao Ho didn't explain much and directly ordered, "Have the people secretly in contact with Xiao Su be more cautious." After losing several battles in a row, Xiao Su must be more vigilant. Don't expose his whereabouts. Yes, this subordinate will do it right away. After the person in the room left, Xiao Ho rubbed his chin. A trace of doubt appeared in his eyes. His eldest brother was really bold. He actually allowed Chu Qingyan to follow him into battle. However, this inadvertently left a weakness for others to use against him. Imperial brother, oh Imperial brother, when did you let your emotions affect your decisions? In that case, I won't be polite and accept your kindness. Chapter 946. When Cheng Yanluo woke up, it was already the morning of the next day. She had a splitting headache and felt weak all over. She didn't know what time it was. She turned her head with great effort and saw the little girl sitting by the bed. Chu Qingyan, who was deep in thought, turned around immediately when she heard the noise. Her eyes were filled with joy as she said, "You're finally awake." "What's wrong with me?" She spoke with great difficulty, only to realize that her voice was unbelievably hoarse. She couldn't bear to see or listen to this sickly and lifeless person in front of her and her weak voice. She couldn't help but get angry. "What's wrong? Have you forgotten? Who was the one who walked around in the heavy rain, crying her heart out? Wasn't it just a breakup? You made it seem like the end of the world. I'm afraid that you'll be tormented to death before the end of the world." This angry scolding woke Cheng Yanluo up from her daze. However, the scene of yesterday kept replaying in front of her eyes. "Time has worn away my feelings for you. I can't be with you anymore. Since that's the case, why don't we let go and let each other go? Although we can't be lovers, you'll always be my junior sister. You're my closest friend in this world." These words were like a curse that filled her ears and gave her a splitting headache. In the end, it stopped at the scene where he looked at her coldly and apologetically. "Xiaoyan, I'm sorry. She reached out to cover her eyes, feeling as if her heart was being torn apart. Little girl, this time, I can finally hate someone without any guilt. It's just that I don't want to hate him. Loving someone is tiring enough. Hating someone is even more tiring and meaningless. These words shocked Chu Qingyan. Then her eyes filled with pity. Yenluo, it's okay. This is good too. After so many years, it's finally over. I don't have to suffer day and night anymore. Her gentle laughter hid endless desolation. Don't be like this, Yenluo. I feel bad just looking at you. Chu Qingyan couldn't listen to her anymore. Cheng Yenluo removed her hands from her eyes and looked at the person beside her. You don't have to worry about me. I'm fine. It's not the end of the world, right? Just take it as a tribute to the past. We can start again in the future. Is that right, Yenluo? Why are your smiling eyes filled with endless emptiness? However, she couldn't say anything at this moment. Yenluo had calmed down after a long time. She shouldn't bring up the scars anymore. She changed the topic and said, You had a high fever yesterday and it lasted the whole night. Fortunately, your fever has subsided and the medicine is brewing. Drink some porridge now to moisten your throat. As she spoke, she brought the bowl of porridge that had cooled down. She stirred it with a spoon and was about to scoop it up when Yenluo suddenly spoke. Little girl, I'll go back to the clinic after you've recovered. Realizing that she had misheard, she raised her head and asked, Have you made up your mind? Cheng Yenluo's gaze was unfocused. There's no point in staying. Although I really want to stay by your side, we'll see each other all the time. My pride won't allow me to embarrass myself in front of someone again. All right, I'll support any decision you make. Although she felt that Ethereal's attitude towards Yenluo was unfathomable, she felt that there was still a chance to salvage the situation. However, when she thought of the current situation and thought that Yenluo would be safer away from here, she couldn't help but close her mouth and swallow her words of persuasion. Thank you, little girl. Cheng Yenluo thanked her sincerely. We're friends. Don't be so courteous with me. She pretended to be angry. Cheng Yenluo smiled. I'm really sorry to have made you drag your injured body to take care of me. I told you to stop talking and you're still being so uptight. I don't want to listen to these words in the future. Eat your porridge. Chu Qingyan said fiercely, but her actions were extremely gentle. Cheng Yenluo smiled gently. Cheng Yenluo was very cooperative in the following days. She took her medicine well and ate her meals obediently. She didn't cry or make a fuss and was so quiet that no one had to worry about her. However, it was this obedient and quiet manner that made Chu Qingyan even more worried, so she would come over to stay with her from time to time. This inevitably made Xiao Su feel indignant. She was by his side, but he couldn't see her or eat her. However, he could only let her do whatever she wanted. After all, she was her friend, so he couldn't say anything. However, Ethereal had been ordered around by him recently. He couldn't touch the little fellow's people, but that didn't mean that he couldn't touch his own people. Even Hualing, who was implicated by Ethereal, couldn't help but grumble as he moved the herbs. Ethereal, you brat. You don't want such an infatuated and beautiful girl and insist on making piles of these herbs. I really have to take my hat off to you. Speaking of which, even Miss Cheng, who has such a feisty personality, is dead set on you. I really can't bear to see you like this. Ethereal remained silent. Hualing had always been at odds with him, so he wanted to tease him at this time. However, when he saw his gloomy appearance, he couldn't help putting away his joke. He looked at him suspiciously. Ethereal, what is wrong with you? I'm fine. Ethereal softly replied. Is that so? I saw you personally check the furnace for Miss Cheng's medicine this morning. Can you explain to me why you're publicly rejecting her, but secretly caring for her? Hualing leaned over to look at him. Ethereal's hand paused. He picked up the herbs and turned to walk forward. You don't understand. Hualing winked at his back. So what if you like someone? You're looking down on us single dogs. However, to be honest, he really didn't understand. The peaceful days passed by as they rested and adjusted. Inside the study, Xiao Su and his trusted subordinates were discussing their strategy. Master, it was as you expected. We didn't make a move and Southern Song's side couldn't see through us. The spy hidden in our army couldn't hold back and sent a message to the other side. Our whereabouts were finally exposed. Hua Ling handed over the letter in his hand as he continued to speak. This person is very smart. He shot the secret letter out with an arrow, and the person who received it hid in the dark to take the letter. From the beginning to the end, the people of the southern blue continent never sent back a letter to him. This is also the reason why our people never found out. Xiao Su knit his brows. At this time, he had already opened the letter. After skimming it, he asked, "Who is this person?" This person doesn't belong to anyone in the court. 2 years ago, he relied on the military exam to become our Sichuan's second place. His name is Wu Qing. Because his martial arts aren't weak and he knows a bit about the art of war, he was sent to the border by His Majesty. In these 2 years, he has made quite a few contributions and is now the deputy general of a battalion. Hua Ling honestly replied. He had an impression of this person. He seemed to be honest and simple. Xiao Su coldly curled his lips. It's about time. It's time for us to counterattack. Chapter 947. Although they had been biding their time for the past 2 days, and the enemy was also silent, Chu Qingyan could feel the increasingly tense atmosphere in the air, as if something was quietly happening in a place that was invisible to the naked eye. When it was close to noon, Jean Xin, who had been missing since he was taken away by Big Ice Cube, appeared in front of her. Have you gotten used to the barracks recently? She knew that Big Ice Cube had arranged for him to be in the granary, but she didn't know the details. At this time, she smiled and asked with concern. Jean Xin nodded. I'm already getting used to it, Master doesn't need to worry. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan laughed heartily. You're my man, how can I be worried about you? In the future, I hope that when you succeed, I can also bask in your glory. The speaker didn't mean it, but the listener meant it. Jean Xion's expression was serious, as if he was making an oath. Master, don't worry, no matter where I go, no matter what I do, as long as Master needs anything, I will ask at any time. In my heart, you are the only Master. This was showing his position, whether he could be an official or not in the future, his loyalty would never be to the emperor, but to the woman in front of him who gave him a chance to be reborn. Although these words sounded very comfortable, Chu Qingyan faintly felt that, why did it sound so formal? Just as she had yet to come back to her senses, Jin Xin had already continued speaking. Master, in half an hour, this subordinate will set out with the provisions. You must take care of your body. Jean Xian bowed his head. She was stunned. Are you going to carry out a mission? She wanted to ask more, but remembered Big Ice Cube's instructions these days, to take care of her injuries and not to interfere in other things. Although she was unwilling to accept it, in the end she didn't ask anything. Good duel. Follow His Highness, your future is bright. In the future, when you make a name for yourself, Xining will follow you, and I will be more assured. At this time, Chu Qingyan was like an old mother, worrying about the life of the people around her. In such a serious atmosphere, the master actually talked about this. Jean Xion's expression was somewhat unnatural. After a few words, he fled. Chu Qingyan looked at his departing figure and smiled slyly. Little guy, you're shy now. When the war was over, she would go back and arrange a marriage between the two of them. This could be considered as a happy ending for childhood sweethearts. Lang came riding on a bamboo horse, circling the bed to pluck green plums. In the past, when she heard this poem, she felt very warm. Who didn't want to have a childhood sweetheart? This was truly a lifetime of companionship, not missing a single part of the journey. She wondered if she and Big Ice Cube could be considered childhood sweethearts. She asked him when they came to the study. Xiao Su meditated for a while and smiled faintly. You can say that. This answer was not certain at all, but on the way here, she had thought about it a lot. Strictly speaking, she and Big Ice Cube were not childhood sweethearts if it was based on their mental age. However, from the time she was 10 years old until now, he had been by her side. She also hoped that in the future, the two of them would not be separated. Her only regret was that she did not participate in Big Ice Cube's youth. That was where she regretted. If the gears of fate could have spun a little earlier, she definitely wouldn't have let him suffer so much alone for so many years. Xiao Su finished speaking and did not hear her reply. When he looked up at her, he found that she was looking at him absent-mindedly with an indescribable emotion in her eyes. He thought that she was thinking nonsense again. After thinking about it, he said clumsily, "Actually, you don't have to stick to the words childhood sweetheart. In this life, I will accompany you to the end." Chu Qingyan blinked. Was she hearing things? She had unintentionally received such a surprising confession. She was simply wild with joy. Her face slowly turned rosy, and her shy eyes suddenly did not even dare to look at him. Xiao Su was still thinking hard at this moment. He continued, "If there is no definition for these words, I think, in this life, we will be each other's childhood sweetheart." Just as he finished speaking, a black shadow enlarged. He looked up and saw the person in front of him suddenly pouncing on him. He instinctively reached out to catch her. "Big Ice Cube, let's be each other's childhood sweetheart for life." There was a mischievous and satisfied smile in her words. When the playful voice entered his ears, he could not help but smile. "Don't be so reckless. You are still injured." How did it feel to have a boyfriend who did not know how to flirt? This was Chu Qingyan's current mood. Shouldn't the next sentence be to continue to confess affectionately or to protect her? How did it become to scold her for being careless? However, "Big Ice Cube, I think I used too much force. My chest hurts a little." She could not move at all. She felt that if she moved, her entire body would fall apart. Was this the punishment for being impulsive? When Xiao Su heard this, he immediately and carefully carried her from his embrace and sat her on his lap. Then he asked her where it hurt the most. He reached out and placed his hand on her chest, instilling true qi into her to help her circulate her qi and blood. A warm flow continuously flowed into her body, spreading from her chest to her limbs. Very quickly, the piercing pain slowly dissipated along with the warm flow. In the end, her entire body felt warm and comfortable. Xiao Su was worried and anxious at first, but when he saw her relaxed expression, he could not help but heave a sigh of relief. He did not know whether to laugh or cry at her previous actions. However, when his mind relaxed, he gradually felt the softness under his palm, as well as the warmth. His heart started to beat faster, as if it was contagious. His originally calm heart started to become restless. He felt that the skin under his clothes was burning fiercely. He wanted to stop, but she still needed to inject true qi. In the past, when faced with the teasing of all kinds of women, even if they took off everything, he could still turn a blind eye. His heart was calm, as if he was looking at a piece of wood walking in front of him. However, this little fellow in front of him didn't even need to use any charm techniques. She didn't even need to move. She only needed to stand there quietly and his eyes would follow her. Not to mention, she was lying obediently in his arms in the most defenseless position. He felt that his heart was about to burn from the torment. Chu Qingyan also noticed that his hand was placed on her chest. Because she was recuperating, she did not bind her chest today, so the scorching heat pressed against her, causing her face to blush again. However, she felt that the person in front of her was too serious, as if he did not have the slightest passion for love. How could she be the only one whose heart was beating wildly, suffering from the torment of budding? After moving her arms slightly and finding that she could move freely, the corners of her eyes moved playfully. She got up and wrapped her arms around his neck, and then sent her lips forward. Chapter 948. When the golden wind and jade dew met, it was better than countless things in the human world. When Chu Qingyan pressed herself against him, the two of them were slightly shocked. Then their cold lips began to burn with sparks flying everywhere, making their blood boil. When they were young, their feelings were hazy and beautiful. And when they were young, their feelings were warm and charming. When their fingers were tightly intertwined, they were unwilling to separate. The young and tender feeling was beautiful and charming, seducing people's souls. And that pair of clear and moist eyes were so bright. The combination of enchanting and pure made people unable to control themselves. His hand slid down from her shoulder to her waist, slowly bringing her closer to him. The hand on her chest moved and the two of them trembled slightly. In front of her, his dark eyes were like pearls in the night, shockingly bright, like a whirlpool. When they met, she couldn't help being sucked in. His black hair was tied up high, and at this time, it fell to the side with his body. A few strands fell into her collar, itching and numbing. She didn't know when the hand on her chest had moved to her chin. With a gentle lift, she couldn't help but endure the torrential storm of kisses that rained down on her. At this time, their lips were burning hot. The two of them panted and retreated. However, people instinctively wanted more, especially when they saw themselves in each other's eyes. They found that there was no room for anything else between the two of them. Lowering their heads or moving closer, lingering, they were already reluctant to separate. They didn't know how much time had passed, but when they were together with the person they cared about, it was as if time was just a snap of a finger. The sun slowly set in the west, and its shadow slowly swayed through the window, falling on the two of them, as if it was plated with a faint golden light. The warm atmosphere was just right, giving the two people who knew that they should stop another beautiful reason to continue. The heat wave seemed to want to burn her to ashes. In front of her, other than his clear eyes, there was also a large expanse of gorgeous fireworks. In the end, his hands slowly came out of her clothes. He restrained his restless heart and helped her tidy up her clothes with difficulty. The time wasn't right. Her body was still injured, so he couldn't only care about himself. Chu Qingyan slumped against him, her hands resting loosely on his shoulders. She panted as she looked at the fine beads of sweat on his forehead. She knew that a man who could stop himself at the last moment must have very strong self-control. Sometimes she admired the big ice cube's self-control, but sometimes she felt sorry for him. As a modern woman, although she didn't belong to the bold and unrestrained faction, she wasn't a stubborn person. If she had decided on someone, she wouldn't mind. But in the big ice cube's view, he couldn't do this unless it was their wedding day. Otherwise, it wouldn't be proper and it would be disrespect to her. This made her very moved. What difference? She didn't dare to think about it anymore. Otherwise, the heat that had gone down with great difficulty would rise again. She raised her head to admire the beautiful man in front of her. Her eyes still had lingering charm. Her normally light pink lips were like burning fireworks, beautiful and moist. Sweat dripped down from his forehead and rolled down his neck to his collar. This appearance was simply seducing people to commit a crime. Her beauty was unique and unparalleled. Unknowingly, she could hook people's hearts. She immediately turned her gaze away, afraid that she would accidentally turn into a wolf. At this time, Xiao Su also didn't feel good. The person in front of him had a red face and her eyes were watery. When she looked at him, it was as if a cat was scratching his heart. It was itchy and stirring his heart. At this time, she turned her face slightly. His gaze just happened to meet her loose collar, and he could see everything inside. He immediately turned his head and looked away, afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself. He couldn't only care about himself. He still had to care about the little fellow's body. The two of them quietly snuggled up to each other, calming the turbulence in their hearts. Although they didn't say anything, they didn't feel awkward at all. Instead, they felt that such a time was very rare. It was already dusk. When Chu Qingyan felt that her body was fine and her face wasn't so red, she took the initiative to open her mouth. Jean Xian should be on his way now. What did you ask him to do? Before the three armies move, the provisions go first. He will escort the provisions of the three armies to the next town. Xiao Su's fingers hooked her hair, twirling it leisurely. The soft hair made his heart as soft as water. Escort the provisions? She blinked, thinking that this task was a little too important. He just entered the army camp. Is it appropriate for him to take on such an important task? The provisions were the support of an army. At the same time, it was also the guarantee for the two armies to compete. It was very important. She felt that it was a little risky to let Jean Xian do it. He raised the corner of his mouth. Who was the one who said that as long as he was given a chance, he would definitely be able to break out of his own world? I'm just giving him a chance. Whether he can seize it or not, it's up to him. Chu Qingyan weakly raised her hand. This humble one is me. Xiao Su smiled and stroked her long hair. His black eyes flashed. Jean Xin is using the excuse of escorting the provisions as a bait. She was slightly surprised. She hadn't participated in their meetings for a few days and didn't know where they were now. When she heard this, although she was worried about Jean Xin's trip, she was more expectant. Because she believed that the big ice block didn't need to use any tricks. If he used a trick, it would definitely hit the nail on the head. There was no need to worry too much. But when he started to talk and she listened with great interest, he didn't mention it again. He was really tantalizing. She tilted her head and said softly, "Big ice block, tell me quickly. How did you take back the home ground this time?" The person in front of him had thin eyebrows and was full of smiles. Her lips were red without any makeup. She was elegant and beautiful. His heart swayed and he couldn't help but lower his head to give her a light peck on her lips. When he got up, he wasn't surprised to see her puffing out her cheeks and glaring at him with big bright eyes. Her soft red cheeks made her gaze look harmless. He smiled lightly. In her eyes, it was dazzling. She was dazzled for a moment. I've already found the person who leaked the news. Now, I want to use this person to take the initiative to lure the snake out of its hole. The other party can know us like the back of his hand through him and beat us at our own game. Why can't we sow discord and beat them at their own game? He spoke unhurriedly. His tone was light, but there was a faint murderous intent. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but raise her eyebrows and smile. The big ice block rarely argued with people because in his eyes, those people weren't on the same level. But once he was serious, he was quite scary. This was the so-called don't make a move. Once he made a move, he would make you lose everything. This was the price you had to pay for provoking him. She suddenly looked forward to the next battle. But it was a pity that no matter how she acted cute, the big ice block's mouth was like a clam. He didn't tell her. She thought angrily. Why didn't he act like this when they were touching just now? Humph. Chapter 949. Not long after Jean Xin left Jiangning County with the army provisions, Pang Huang received news that several of his advisors had different opinions on the matter. Some felt that they should strike first to gain the upper hand and cut off Sichuan's army provisions. Others thought that they should take the initiative to attack and intercept Xiao Su's tens of thousands of troops. They would stop him from joining the army and attack from both sides at the same time. The two sides quarreled fiercely. Pang Huang rubbed his eyebrows. The quarrel was giving him a headache. He raised his hand to stop both sides, then turned to look at Rui Luo. Is there any news from Sichuan? He was hinting at the people hiding in the southern Song army. Rui Luo was about to talk about this matter, but when he heard the crown prince speak, he didn't dare delay. That person sent us a message saying that Xiao Su feels that his 30,000 troops aren't strong enough. He plans to head to Jiang Yifeng and join the three armies. Then, he'll defeat us one by one. Pang Huang narrowed his eyes. He wants to defeat us one by one? That's just wishful thinking. The advisors present agreed. Your Highness is right. Then what should we do? Pang Huang flung his sleeves and sat upright on the main seat. He spoke in an imposing manner. First, cut off his army provisions and throw them into disarray. Then, intercept them halfway and trap them. Stall Sichuan's army and cut off their escape route. Your Highness is wise. Everyone agreed. He didn't know why, but ever since he parted ways with Chu Qingyan in the valley, he no longer had any patience for Xiao Su. He couldn't wait to kill him. The sooner he ended the war, the sooner he could see her on the battlefield. Moreover, his imperial father had already ordered him to end the war quickly and annex southern Song and Sichuan's territories as soon as possible. Otherwise, it would be winter if he delayed any longer. When that time came, their people would starve and suffer from cold and hunger. Pang Huang's heroic phoenix eyes narrowed, and his killing intent was difficult to conceal. Jiangning County was very lively today. Because the army provisions had already left, the army had to follow closely behind. All the officers and soldiers were methodically packing up and preparing to set off. Under the locust tree, Qing Yanluo stood in a white robe. She had applied a thin layer of makeup to cover her sickly cheeks, making her look even more radiant. However, her eyes, which were supposed to be sparkling, were as calm as still water. In just a few days, she had lost a lot of weight. Her slender waist was so slim that it was as if a gust of wind could take her away. Chu Qingyan stood in the courtyard and glanced at her. Sighing faintly, she walked forward and draped the cloak in her hand over her shoulders. "It's windy. This will make you warmer." When she felt the weight on her shoulders, she came back to her senses and heard the little girl's voice. She smiled faintly and said, "You're like an old woman, chattering nonstop. Isn't it because I care about you? You're really taking my kindness for granted." Chu Qingyan snorted and said, "It's almost time. Let's go pack up and get ready to go." Cheng Yanluo nodded. The two of them turned around and walked a few steps before they saw Ethereal walking towards them. Chu Qingyan instinctively glanced at the person beside her. This should be the first time the two of them met after falling out. Would they fight? She was already prepared to help her friend. Ethereal had also just seen the two of them. His eyes fell on the person a few steps away. Seeing that she had lost a lot of weight, his heart ached slightly. He walked forward and bowed to his little princess consort. "Little princess consort, are you going back to your room?" Chu Qingyan nodded. The atmosphere was a little awkward, and she didn't know what to say. At this moment, the person beside her didn't look at Ethereal. She didn't stop walking and walked past him as if they didn't know each other. Ethereal's body stiffened. When he was left alone in the courtyard, he slowly relaxed and smiled bitterly at himself. "Murong-ju, isn't this what you wanted? What's there to be upset about? You reap what you sow. But you can't regret it." He stood in the courtyard for a while before moving his numb feet and walking forward weakly. Chu Qingyan looked at the silent person beside her and felt a little upset. She wanted to persuade him, but she didn't know where to start. If she didn't persuade him, she would be worried. Just as she was in a dilemma, the person beside her spoke. "Little girl, don't worry. I'll get over it. It's just a relationship. It took me more than 10 years to go from liking him to falling in love with him. Give me the same amount of time, and I'll definitely forget about him until there's nothing left. If you don't want me, then I'll stop." Chu Qingyan met her calm but slightly red eyes. Her lips moved as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she could only nod. "Actually, even you aren't sure if you can forget him. Meeting the right person at the right time is honey. Meeting the right person at the wrong time is arsenic." She hoped that given some time, the two of them would be able to mend their relationship. Before the army left Jiangning County, Xiao Su received news that the provisions had been completely destroyed by Pang Huang's ambush. "Master, Nansong fell into a trap," Hua Ling said happily. Xiao Su nodded without much expression on his face. His eyes under the mask narrowed sharply. "Turin, how's the arrangement of manpower? The people we sent have already imitated Wu Qing's handwriting and habits to perfection. A few days ago, under his master's orders, he arranged for a person who was good at imitating handwriting to be by Wu Qing's side. His goal was to replace Wu Qing in the end. We can take down Wu Qing now and replace him with our people," Xiao Su said without hesitation. "Yes." Turin bowed and accepted the order. "Then should we eliminate Wu Qing by the roots?" Fong Lu asked. Xiao Su shook his head. His eyes were deep as he said, "No need. Wu Qing is useful to us. Hua Ling, let Lu Guang be in charge of prying open Wu Qing's mouth. Find out who the mastermind behind him is and what their goal is." Hua Ling accepted the order. Then he asked in a puzzled tone, "Master, who do you think is the mastermind behind everything?" "Currently, this prince has no clue. After we deal a heavy blow to Nansong, the mastermind might not be able to hold back and jump out." Xiao Su frowned. This feeling of not knowing whether the enemy was in the light or not was in the dark was very uncomfortable. Once this battle was over, he would definitely do a thorough investigation. If this person came from another country, then he wouldn't have to worry so much. However, if this person came from Sichuan, then it meant that there would definitely be a huge uproar in Sichuan in the future. He sorted out his emotions and focused all his attention on the great battle that was about to begin. It was futile to think about anything now. Only by advancing step by step could he ensure that the people around him were safe and sound. Master, the general guarding the city has already led the troops to replace the city guards. The remaining people are already in formation and waiting to move out. After receiving the report from his subordinates, Hua Ling bowed respectfully and reported to his master in front of him. It's about time. Order the army to move out of the city. Xiao Su stood up and waved his arm. The people in front of him bowed respectfully in response. Then they turned around and moved out. The war between the two armies had only truly begun at this moment. Everyone rubbed their palms and raised their heads in anticipation. They had been waiting for this moment. Chapter 950. Your Highness Crown Prince, we have successfully burned all of the Sichuan's rations. The deputy general who had been sent out returned and announced the good news with a face full of excitement. Cheers rang out in the southern blue main tent. Pang Huang raised his brows, feeling that things had gone too smoothly. Feng Chen, tell me, how did you fight this battle? Feng Chen, who was feeling smug, immediately put away his smile and stepped forward. Reporting to Your Highness Crown Prince, it's like this. We ambushed them at 7 Mile Cliff. In this place, one man can hold back 10,000 men. We occupied a very advantageous geographical position and set up an arrow formation. When the Sichuan's army entered our shooting range, we fired the fire arrows. At this point, Feng Chen couldn't help but raise his voice and say proudly, the rations were set on fire, and we caught them off guard. They had no time to think about fighting and immediately went to save the rations. However, our soldiers waiting at the foot of the mountain swarmed them and caught them off guard. They had to protect the rations and guard against us at the same time. They couldn't do two things at the same time. In the end, they couldn't care about either side and the rations were burned by us. With that, the soldiers beside him all gave him a thumbs up. Pang Huang listened and felt that there were no flaws, but he felt that he was missing something. Qin Cheng suddenly said, General Feng Chen, did you check if the rations were real? When he said this, Pang Huang's eyes lit up. This was exactly what he wanted to ask. Feng Chen's expression changed slightly when he heard this. He had been so focused on taking credit that he had completely forgotten about this. He wanted to confess, but this question came out of Qin Cheng's mouth. He had always looked down on Qin Cheng and felt that such a thin and weak body didn't deserve to stand with such strong and valiant people like them. Moreover, he always narrowed his eyes and spoke in an eccentric manner, as if he was constantly scheming against others. Being questioned like this, Feng Chen felt very uncomfortable. He said angrily, Of course I checked it. It's all proper rations. Mr. Qin Cheng, do you have a problem with this general? Qin Cheng replied calmly, This one doesn't. Good, Feng Chen, you've done very well this time. When we return, this prince will report your contributions to royal father. Pang Huang let go of a large stone in his heart and said with a bright smile. Feng Chen immediately agreed, beaming with joy. In fact, when he was at 7 Mile Cliff, he always felt a little strange. The provisions were burned too quickly, but when he heard His Highness the Crown Prince's promise, he immediately threw those doubts to the back of his mind. Maybe the wind was too strong, he comforted himself. Your Highness, now that Sichuan's provisions have been lost, should we take advantage of the victory to pursue and attack? Asked Rui Luo. Pang Huang waved his hand. Don't be impulsive. Even if we run out of provisions with Xiao Su's army of tigers and wolves, we won't be able to gain any benefits if we rush up and fight them head-on. Now that their rations have been burned, we just have to wait for their rations to run out. When they are starving and powerless, we will give them a heavy blow. When the time comes, even if Xiao Su has the title of God of War, he won't be able to resist us at all. Qin Cheng said from the side. Pang Huang was overjoyed as if victory was in sight. He waved his hand and ordered, In the next few days, don't act rashly. Conserve your energy and wait for orders before moving. This general obeys. In the main tent, the atmosphere was high and the blood was boiling. When Chu Qingyan learned that the provisions had been burned, it was already after the army had set off. She looked worried. Are Jean Xin and the others okay? There aren't many casualties. He took the soldiers to do other things. Xiao Su comforted her. The original plan was to have Jean Xin pretend that the provisions had been burned, then take the opportunity to hide and wait for an opportunity to make a move. Although she was anxious, after hearing his words, her anxiety receded a lot. However, she still couldn't help but ask, "Big ice block, what should we do without provisions?" "You don't have to worry about that. I have my ways," Xiao Su said indifferently. Chu Qingyan nodded. Just as she was thinking of a way to salvage the situation, she suddenly frowned and felt that something was wrong. "Why is it that you, the general, aren't worried, but I, an unimportant person, am so anxious for you? Are you hiding something from me? Tell me, what is your plan?" Xiao Su laughed and pinched her nose, his eyes teasing. "Do you really want to know? Isn't that obvious?" She slapped his hand away and said unhappily. Xiao Su retracted his hand. Her strength wasn't enough to swat a mosquito. He raised his eyebrows and leaned against the wall of the carriage. "I'll tell you when you've recovered." Chu Qingyan's mouth twitched. This was bullying a handicapped person. She turned her head and turned her back, ignoring him. However, a low chuckle came from behind her. She felt embarrassed and turned around to pounce at him. She wanted to tear off his mask and pinch his face to see if he could still laugh. However, she underestimated her body. Just as she was in the air, a pain in her chest caused her spine to spasm. Her entire body fell straight towards him. Xiao Su saw that something was wrong with her and immediately reached out to catch her. After she calmed down, he held his forehead and said helplessly, "Fortunately, I had the foresight. You should obediently recover. After you recover, whether you want to climb a tree to catch bird eggs or go into the sea to catch fish and shrimp, I won't stop you." This time, Chu Qingyan, who wanted to refute, didn't have anything to say. This was called she deserved to leave a weakness for him to use against her. After sitting down again, she thought it through. Other than the few years when Big Ice Cube grew up in the palace, he spent the rest of his time on the battlefield. He had fought more battles than she had, so she didn't need to be so worried. On the contrary, she didn't want to cause trouble for him. Because of her injury, the people of Jiangning County had specially prepared a carriage for her. She pulled Big Ice Cube along with her, while Yen Luo rode alone because she didn't want to be disturbed. She hugged her knees and sat on the couch, carefully flipping through the folk joke collection that Big Ice Cube had given her. She occasionally raised her head to look at him, admiring the handsome man before continuing to read. However, she didn't know why, but after the journey today, she felt that Big Ice Cube was absent-minded and lost in thought from time to time. She was a little puzzled, but before she could ask, Turin appeared beside the carriage. "Master, Ci Shui Slope is not far ahead. Do you need this subordinate to stop?" Ci Shui Slope? What was that place? Why did they have to stop? Just as she looked at the person beside her in confusion and wanted to ask for an answer, she saw a flash of sorrow in Big Ice Cube's eyes. She couldn't help but be stunned. She rubbed her eyes, wondering if her eyes were playing tricks on her. At this moment, Big Ice Cube had already answered. "Have the army stop and rest. We'll set off in 2 hours." Chapter 951. As soon as Xiao Su finished speaking, the carriage stopped, and the orderly and solemn sound also stopped. Chu Qingyan still didn't understand, but he already got off the carriage. She didn't have time to think and immediately followed him down the carriage. After she steadied herself, she saw Turin walking up with a bag in his hand. "Master, everything is ready." At this time, Hualing suddenly walked in front of his master, with a trace of grief on his face. "Master, this subordinate asks you to tell Feng Ling that I will visit him next year." Xiao Su nodded, then turned to face Chu Qingyan who was walking over, and said, "I'm going out for a while, you stay in the carriage. If there's anything, find Hualing or Feng Lu." After saying that, Xiao Su turned around and was about to leave, but his sleeve was grabbed. He turned around and saw a pair of watery eyes. "What's the matter?" "I also want to go with you," Chu Qingyan said bluntly. Xiao Su furrowed his brows slightly as he pondered whether her body could withstand it. At this time, Chu Qingyan quickly explained, "Walking is no problem for me. If it's climbing, cough cough, it should also be no problem." Turin couldn't help but smile when he saw this and said to his master, "Gongzi seems to be much better, why don't we let her follow?" Xiao Su looked at the little fellow who showed a pleading look because of Turin's words, and his heart softened. "Follow closely later. If you feel uncomfortable, I'll send you back." Chu Qingyan quickly nodded. If she didn't respond now, she would be a fool. So Chu Qingyan followed Big Ice Cube and the dozens of Xiao cavalry behind him, and set off towards Ci Shui Slope. Ci Shui Slope, as the name implied, was a small slope, but this small slope was overgrown with weeds, as if it was forgotten by people. If it wasn't for the people in front clearing the way, they would have been drowned in these cattail weeds. The journey was very difficult because it had just rained heavily, the ground was very muddy, deep and shallow, and it took a lot of effort to walk. At this time, Chu Qingyan had several questions in her heart about the destination, but she found that everyone was focused on walking, and a trace of sadness appeared on their faces, so Chu Qingyan couldn't ask. Their emotions were infected by everyone, as if the road in front of them was dark and full of thorns. Everyone walked with incomparable difficulty. When they passed through the tall weeds, their vision finally opened up. Chu Qingyan let out a sigh of relief, and then after walking out of Big Ice Cube, the scene in front of her, all her movements froze. Tombstones of different sizes stood erect in the misty fog. There was no end in sight to the tombstones. While she was still in shock, Xiao Su had already walked up to her slowly. She looked at his back and felt an indescribable sadness. Even the air was filled with sadness. Her heart couldn't help but to think, what was this place? What's the persons to Big Ice Cube? At this time, the group of people stopped at the tomb at the front. Turin took out the things in the bag, candles and paper money. Were they going to sweep the tomb? The following Xiao cavalry automatically put away their weapons and buried their heads in weeding. The candles were lit, and in the dense mountain fog, it flickered with light, as if it was illuminating the lost stars. Xiao Su lit the incense, and closed his eyes to mourn at the tomb at the front. Chu Qingyan's heart was full of doubts, and walked to the side of Turin who was scattering paper money, and asked in a low voice, "Turin, who's buried here?" Turin looked at the rows of scattered tombstones in front of him, as if he was immersed in some kind of memory. "There are a total of 483 tombs here, and the ones sleeping here are the most heroic Xiao cavalry from 7 years ago. Their cavalry master is called Feng Ling, a member of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, air, wind. 7 years ago, Sichuan was also invaded by foreign enemies, and they broke through the border defense line with lightning speed. At that time, Master and we were very far away from here, and only Feng Ling who was chasing the bandits was nearby, so Feng Ling was ordered to secretly delay the enemy and wait for reinforcements. But no one knew that the enemy couldn't stand being disturbed, and thought of a way to surround the people nearby, forcing Feng Ling and the others to show up, otherwise they would burn the people alive. And the result? Hearing this, Chu Qingyan roughly knew the story. Although she knew the result, she still couldn't help but feel worried. Turin smiled bitterly. "From the moment we entered the Xiao cavalry, we always told ourselves that we are loyal to Master, and our responsibility is to protect the people. So the people were saved, and Feng Ling and the others didn't walk out of here." Before the war, this place was not called Ci Shui Slope, and it was later renamed by the people. Ci Shui Slope? Is there any special meaning? Chu Qingyan asked sadly. Turin's eyes turned sad, because that year, the blood of Feng Ling and the others dyed this place red, like a sea of blood. "Little princess, did you notice that these tombstones didn't have names, because when we found them, we couldn't distinguish their original appearance? Ci Shui Slope, as the name suggests, the benevolent heroes used their own flesh and blood to exchange for the lives of the people." Chu Qingyan's eyes were hot, and tears almost fell. It was enough to see how fierce that war was. They are the heroes of the people. Chu Qingyan said softly. Turin slightly raised the corner of his mouth, with a sad arc. Yes, they are all heroes. In that war, no one retreated, and they all fought to the last moment. When they arrived, the ground was full of their former companions, and they didn't have any breath, and they wouldn't talk to them anymore, and they wouldn't accompany them anymore. They were brave and fearless, and with loyalty to their masters and protection of the people, they died on the battlefield in the most tragic way. Maybe it was because of this place, Turin, who was usually quiet, suddenly became talkative. Little princess, you should know that the person in charge of our intelligence group is Water Spirit, right? Chu Qingyan nodded. I only heard about her, but I didn't see her. Water Spirit and Feng Ling were a couple. That year, the master was supposed to hold a banquet for them, but who would have thought? The Earth Spirit heaved a heavy sigh. The saddest thing for two people who loved each other was to love you, but you left in the most unexpected way. Chu Qingyan finally understood why Big Ice was so sad and guilty when he saw these tombstones. Little princess, there is one thing that you may not know. It is about ethereal. Turin said faintly. What is it? Chu Qingyan still hadn't recovered from her sadness. Before Feng Ling's accident, the situation was relatively peaceful. Ethereal originally planned to return to the sect and reconcile with Miss Cheng, but after this incident, he never mentioned Miss Cheng again. Chu Qingyan was stunned. Turin sighed. Perhaps Ethereal was also afraid that if he left suddenly like Feng Ling, Miss Cheng would be alone in the world like Water Spirit. Chapter 952. Chu Qingyan asked in surprise, do you mean that Ethereal rejected Yen Luo again because he had no choice in reality? The Earth Spirit shook its head. This subordinate didn't say that. It's just that this subordinate feels that what happened between Kong Ling and Miss Cheng back then can't be completely blamed on Kong Ling. It's because we chose a different path from others, so the heavy responsibility on our shoulders is something that others can't understand. Chu Qingyan was still immersed in Turin's words when Turin suddenly called out, Little princess consort. What's the matter? She looked at him. At this moment, Turin's eyes were filled with deep pleading. Chu Qingyan didn't understand what was going on. Actually, I'm telling you all this today because I hope that you can care more about Master. Every year at this time, Master's heart is filled with grief. No one can compare to Master in grief over what happened back then. However, he never tells anyone about it and silently bears it all by himself. Now, I'm very glad that Master has you by his side. The Earth Spirit's words made her very surprised and sad at the same time. In fact, under Big Ice Cube's strong outer shell, he bore many things that ordinary people couldn't bear, but he wasn't good at telling others. She turned to look at the person walking between the hills. Her eyes were filled with warmth, and she couldn't help but walk towards him. At this moment, the sudden drizzle made her feel that her vision was about to be covered by a gauzy mist. Between heaven and earth, the black figure became clearer in the vast expanse of whiteness. She walked to stand behind him. Perhaps he was immersed in his memories and didn't notice her approach at all. He placed one hand on the tombstone and gently stroked it with a mournful expression. Big Ice Cube, are you willing to tell me their story? Chu Qingyan walked in front of him and looked into his eyes with a slight smile. When he came back to his senses and saw the red marks in her eyes, Xiao Su guessed that she already knew who was buried here. He smiled faintly and asked, What do you want to hear? You trained hard together and had a glorious past, she said without hesitation. Xiao Su thought for a moment, and under her bright eyes, he finally agreed. Thus, she reached out and slid her fingers through his palm, holding his hand firmly. Then she looked up and said, I'll walk with you while we listen. The heat from his palm brought a trace of warmth in this rainy weather. His eyes moved slightly as he nodded. Thus, the two of them strolled through the grass, passing through the tombstones of the nameless clan. Along the way, Xiao Su used his deep voice to recount the days of the past, with Chu Qingyan interjecting from time to time. The rain was not heavy, but in the mountain forest, the sky and earth seemed to be misty. The low narration came from afar and could not be heard clearly. Beside Turin stood the Xiao cavalry that came with him. One of them said, "This is the first time Master has talked about the past since Lord Windspirit passed away." That's right, after Lord Windspirit passed away, those things in the past became taboo. No one dared to talk about it in front of Master, afraid that Master would feel uncomfortable. Another person said, "Little Princess Consort is Master's lucky star." Turin concluded. Everyone did not comment. From one end to the other, Xiao Su recalled bits and pieces of the past as he spoke. When he finished the last sentence, he suddenly felt his eyes brighten. Chu Qingyan did not notice the change in him, as she was still immersed in the story he was telling. It had to be said that these people were all strong men, fearless. To be able to nurture such people, Big Ice Cube was truly very powerful. Some of them were orphans left behind in the war, some were orphans who had lost their homes due to disasters. No matter where they came from, they all had one thing in common: they had no parents, and struggled bitterly in the mortal world. If no one helped them, they would be swallowed by death. Big Ice Cube's appearance gave them life, gave them hope, and became their faith, so they followed him wholeheartedly and never betrayed him. This was also why, whenever there was danger, the Xiao cavalry would have the heart to die, and would rather sacrifice themselves than let their master suffer any harm. Everyone said that Xiao Su was fortunate to have such an invincible army. But others did not know, how much did he sacrifice for them? Every time someone left, the one who felt the most pain was only him. For so many years, he had been torturing himself, because he was the one who gave the order. He felt that he had ruined the lives of more than 400 of his companions, but if he did not give the order, more people would die. Therefore, he gave himself a punishment that lasted for life. Because she saw through the prison in his heart, Chu Qingyan felt extremely sad, but she knew that it was useless. She had to help Big Ice Cube walk out. She tightened her grip on his fingers, causing him to look at her. "Big Ice Cube, the dead are gone, we should look forward, and not be immersed in the pain of the past. This is also what those who left did not want to see." Her gaze landed on the tombstones in the boundless rain and said softly, "Back then, these martyrs saved countless people, fulfilling the righteousness in their hearts, sacrificing themselves. I think at the last moment, they were proud of themselves, and had no regrets. They definitely did not want the living to be in pain. And what we can do, is to work hard to live, and then continue to fulfill their wishes, so that they can rest in peace in the underworld." Big Ice Cube, sweeping the tombs is not just a simple sacrifice. The important thing is to reminisce about the precious past, and then with a positive and optimistic attitude, work hard to live on. Willow leaf eyebrows, eyes sparkling, clear as a stream, sincere and beautiful. In the narration just now, the knot in his heart had slowly been untied, and the burden that had been suppressed for many years was finally put down. At this moment, when he heard the little fellow's words, it was as if a spring rain had hit, filling up the holes in his heart, warm and full. A soft light appeared in his eyes. "I thank you. Thank you for listening to my story for so many years, and for being willing to accompany me all the way." Hearing this, she breathed a sigh of relief. The Big Ice Cube was finally put down, but she could not help but argue, "Why are you so polite? I'm not an outsider." Xiao Su could not help but laugh. He raised his hand and rubbed her head. I was wrong." Only then was she satisfied, and just as she was about to continue speaking, she suddenly heard a few sneers, followed by a pleasant voice with a strange tone. Yo, you actually know how to apologize? You know how to open your heart to people? You know how to coax girls? Did the sun rise from the west?" As soon as these words fell, Chu Qingyan immediately became alert. It was simply too shocking to be able to sneak in under their noses. She could not help but coldly shout, "Who's there?" Chapter 953. Who's there? Of course I'm there. The amused voice rang out again, but Chu Qingyan looked around and saw no one. She couldn't help but mutter, where exactly was this person? But from his words, he didn't seem to have any hostility. She heard the person speak again. "This rain is really annoying, I can't even see clearly. I've squatted here for so long to look at my disciple's wife." What the hell? Disciple's wife? At this moment, Xiao Su, who was standing quietly by the side and watching the two, suddenly spoke up, "Master, don't scare Ian." The voice muttered, "You're so protective of your wife. Did I miss something good when you weren't around for the past few years?" The two of them were answering one-on-one, and Chu Qingyan finally reacted. "Master? Big Ice Cube's master." At this moment, a figure appeared in front of the two with a swoosh, holding a paper umbrella in his hand. In the misty rain, the person who came was handsome and charming. You're Big Ice Cube's master, Half-Moon Old Man?" He was once a martial arts alliance leader, a strategist, an official of the imperial court, and now a martial arts legend who travels the world? It was Chu Qingyan's first time seeing this person, and couldn't help but blurt out. But after saying that, she looked at the incomparably beautiful man in front of her and couldn't help but have doubts. "You're so young, you don't look like someone in your 30s or 40s. After muttering to herself, she turned to ask, "Big Ice Cube, do you have another master?" Xiao Su couldn't help but laugh at her confused look. The person holding the paper umbrella had a smug look on his face when he heard that, and winked at Xiao Su. "Where did you find this clown wife?" Big Ice Cube's disciple. He purposely dragged out the last few words. Xiao Su coughed softly and declared, "Although you're my master, this is Ian's personal Chen Wei, so you should call me by my name." The man with the paper umbrella was unhappy. "Forget your master when you see a beauty." Just when Chu Qingyan thought she had caused the conflict between the master and disciple, and was about to explain, the beautiful master had already changed into a playful and affectionate look, waving at Chu Qingyan as if he was talking to a child. "Nice to meet you, disciple's wife. Come, I don't know what you like, so I pulled out a book from under the table for you to read when you're free." As she spoke, the beautiful master took out a tattered book from her sleeve and stuffed it into her hand. She thought for a moment, then took out a big bag of gold balls and stuffed it into her hand. She said nonchalantly, "This is for you to play with." He had an old book in one hand and a heavy sack in the other. Chu Qingyan felt that her beautiful master's way of doing things was really hard to fathom. At this moment, Xiao Su saw the book in her hands, and a hint of surprise flashed through his eyes. He then understood and smiled at her. "This is the only book on cultivating inner strength, and you can't find a second one in the world. It's a secret manual that martial artists fight over. This bag is filled with marbles made of gold, so you can keep it. Don't be polite. Good girl, quickly thank your master." Xiao Su rarely saw the little fellow reveal such an adorable expression, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. Both of these were good things, and Chu Qingyan was simply too pleasantly surprised. She hurriedly went along with the Big Ice Cube's words, and said with a smile, "Thank you, beautiful master." Because she was too happy, she called out the name in her heart, but it was too late to stop. However, the Half-Moon Old Man was very satisfied with this name, and patted Xiao Su's shoulder. "Although you've always been so unadorable, I've always felt that it was a pity. Who would have thought that you would finally find me such a cute disciple's wife? Not bad, you're worth teaching." The corners of Xiao Su's mouth twitched, and Chu Qingyan touched her nose embarrassedly, but she was very surprised by the interaction between the two. This was the first time she saw someone talk to the Big Ice Cube so unscrupulously, and the atmosphere between the two seemed to be faintly harmonious and warm. "Master, you and the Big Ice Cube have a very good relationship." Because it was the first time they met, Chu Qingyan didn't know what to talk about, but she still knew how to say some heartfelt and pleasant words. "Not good at all. If it was good, he should have followed me around the world back then, and traveled everywhere. He abandoned me, he's absolutely despicable." The beautiful master was very indignant as she complained. Chu Qingyan blinked, and then looked at the Big Ice Cube. Being looked at by his little fellow with a questioning gaze, Xiao Su turned to his master and said indifferently, "If master's so-called traveling refers to visiting brothels, entering casinos, and robbing the rich, this disciple feels that doing something practical for the country and the people is more important." Chu Qingyan blinked, and finally looked at the beautiful master. The beautiful master was looked at by his disciple's daughter-in-law with such a clear gaze, and his old face was a little embarrassed. He angrily said to Xiao Su, "You're exposing me again. I already told you when you're outside, you have to leave some face for me. Don't forget, it was Master who raised you up with nothing but shit and urine." Xiao Su indifferently retorted, "Master, before you say this, put away the beauty's paper umbrella in your hand." The beautiful master looked up at his umbrella. It was quite normal, but it was more suitable for a woman to hold, and he took it with him from the brothel today. However, he already didn't have the mood to continue bickering with his disciple, because every time he was shut down by him with a few words. Thus, the beautiful master turned to his disciple's daughter-in-law and said, "Su is so quiet and doesn't know how to be romantic. You definitely won't be happy with him. Why don't you come with me? I'll take you to see all the beautiful men in the world, and then I'll pick a beautiful husband for you. How about that?" Chu Qingyan hadn't had time to recover from the bickering between the two, and she was accidentally led into the beautiful master's trap. Just as she was thinking about how to refuse without hurting this old man who still had a childlike innocence, the big ice cube had already pulled her to his side. "Master, this is my person." The beautiful master snorted and said, "You're still so boring, not fun at all." Xiao Su glanced at him and ignored his protest. Instead, he said indifferently, "Master, this umbrella doesn't suit your style and bearing." When the man who was nagging heard this, he glanced at his umbrella and felt that his disciple's words seemed to make sense. He immediately turned his hand and stuffed the umbrella into his disciple's daughter-in-law's hands. He didn't feel that there was anything wrong with giving away something that he didn't want anymore. "Disciple's daughter-in-law, help me hold it." After he finished speaking, raindrops fell on his face. The beautiful master muttered, "It doesn't suit, but it can shelter you from the rain." Finally, he felt that something was wrong. "Good, you're scheming to make me give the umbrella to your wife. How cunning." Chu Qingyan immediately handed the umbrella over. "Master, you can shelter yourself." "No need, I'm in good health, and you're still injured. You can cover yourself for fun," the beautiful master said proudly. Chu Qingyan looked at this pair of master and disciple and felt inexplicably funny. Chapter 954. When Chu Qingyan was smiling helplessly under the umbrella, she suddenly realized that her clothes seemed to have dried. She was slightly surprised and recalled that when the beautiful master passed her the umbrella, he seemed to have raised his hand and brushed it in front of her face. Could it be that the beautiful master helped her to dry her clothes at that time? This was the only explanation at this time. Yeah, she had to hug this thigh tightly. At this time, she heard the conversation between the two people in front of her. "Master, why are you here?" Logically speaking, the master was not a person who liked to go to the mountains and forests. He liked to be lively and go where there were many people. Seeing him here, Xiao Su was very surprised. The beautiful master waved his hand with a casual expression. "When I was in the land of warmth, I heard people say that you went to war, so I specially came to see if you lost an arm or a leg." "Master, you must be being hunted down," Xiao Su said lightly. "You don't say. Those people from the Tiger Head gang can't take a joke at all. Now they're everywhere looking for," the beautiful master blurted out, but stopped at the end. He looked embarrassed and finally became angry. "Su, didn't I teach you not to expose other people's scars?" "You're right, master." Xiao Su's tone did not sound remorseful at all. The beautiful master stomped his feet and disdained to walk with him. He squeezed into his disciple's wife's umbrella and winked at his disciple. Xiao Su's mouth twitched. He really did not want to admit that this person was the master he had not seen for many years. The more he lived, the more backward he became. At this time, Turin walked forward and saw the half-moon old man. He was pleasantly surprised and respectfully bowed. "Master Half-Moon, why are you here? Your subordinates haven't seen you for a long time." The beautiful master glanced at him and smiled. "Country bumpkin, I haven't seen you for a few years and you've become more and more high-spirited. Are you interested in going to Jianghu with this old man? This old man remembers that you're good at making tea." Master Half Moon, I still have to go to war with my master. I can't accompany you. Moreover, I don't know how to make tea. The one who knows how to make tea is ethereal. Turin replied righteously. The beautiful master rubbed his nose and looked around. I knew it. How could someone as stubborn as you know how to make tea? So this old man remembered wrongly. The one who knows how to play chess is definitely you. The chess player is water spirit, Turin corrected. The carving must be a fire spirit. The beautiful master challenged her memory again. It's the wood spirit, Master Half Moon. Turin corrected again. Xiao Su couldn't stand it anymore. He said to Turin, inform everyone to prepare to return to the camp. Yes, master. At this moment, the beautiful master who had been muttering to herself suddenly said, Su, I'm not going to the barracks. Xiao Su looked at her and thought for a while. Turin, let the fire spirit take the others and leave first. Ben Wang and Ian will stay here for a while. Do we need to let the others stay? Turin was a little worried. As soon as he finished speaking, someone knocked on Turin's head. Bumpkin, with this old man as your master here, what do you have to worry about? Go, 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 don't be an eyesore here. Isn't that right, my daughter-in-law? Chu Qingyan was watching a good show from the side. She didn't want to be dragged into the situation. She hurriedly tried to get away with it. With the half-moon old man's guarantee, Turin didn't delay any longer. He immediately led the people down the mountain. Before leaving the hillside, the three of them burned a stick of incense in front of the tombstones. Xiao Su stood at a high place and looked at the hundreds of tombstones in a daze. The half-moon old man who was standing beside Chu Qingyan said faintly, Su, those few years weren't easy. Chu Qingyan nodded empathetically. He suddenly said to her, my daughter-in-law, when are you going to give birth to a grand disciple for master to play with? Chu Qingyan's earlier melancholy was instantly choked in her throat and she blushed. Cough, cough, cough. Xiao Su collected his emotions and turned around. He saw the little fellow whose face was completely red. He looked at his master reproachfully and said, Master, don't bully her. After saying that, he pulled her away. The half-moon old man was so angry that he stomped his feet. Didn't he just want a grand disciple? Is it appropriate for you to bully master like this? She couldn't help but admit that this master was very cute. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but speak up for him. If I don't bully her, he's going to leave. Xiao Su's lips curled into a faint smile. Chu Qingyan could feel his true happiness. She thought unkindly that it was his fortune to be bullied by the big ice block. After all, he cared about this person. Otherwise, with the big ice block's temper, he wouldn't even be willing to look at unrelated people. Looking at a certain beautiful master who was abandoned by his disciple and his wife, he was very sad. His disciple ran away with his wife and didn't want him anymore. As the few of them left, the rain gradually lessened. Finally, the sky began to clear up. Sorrow had its end, but so did joy. The three of them went down the mountain from another direction and found a clean place to sit down and rest. After the rain, the air was fresh and clean. Everyone felt relaxed. Along the way, the beautiful master talked about his heroic deeds in the pugilistic world. Xiao Su listened quietly and didn't expose him. Chu Qingyan expressed a strong curiosity about the rich and colorful life of the pugilistic world. She would ask questions from time to time. Usually, he didn't have much interest in these things with his taciturn disciple. Now that there was a daughter-in-law who knew how to appreciate his disciple, the more the beautiful master looked at her, the more he liked her. The more he talked, the more excited he became. In the end, he kicked his taciturn disciple off to hunt and prepare dinner. In a short time together, Chu Qingyan finally understood the strange expression on the big ice block's face when he mentioned his master. This master was really a god who caught people off guard. His words and actions were not arrogant, and he looked like an idle young master. However, if one listened carefully, they would be able to feel that this person was very experienced and knowledgeable. No matter what the topic was, he could continue to talk about it. Moreover, he had his own unique views on political affairs. Chu Qingyan finally understood what it meant to be a real person. However, This beautiful master seemed to be very picky. One moment, she said that the haystack here was uncomfortable for him, and the next moment, she said that the fire was not burning hot enough for him to feel cold. As soon as he sat down, she changed from her previous cheerful appearance and became very picky. If it were someone else, they would have already flipped out. However, Chu Qingyan really liked this master and felt that it was a junior's duty to respect the elders. She was tormented by him without complaint. The beautiful master crossed his legs and looked at the little girl busying herself. There was a satisfied light in his eyes. This taciturn disciple didn't drop the ball. He found him a one-in-a-million daughter-in-law. He immediately waved to her. Disciple's daughter-in-law, don't be busy. Come here. Chu Qingyan didn't know that her performance along the way had passed the master's assessment. She put down the firewood and walked over. Master, is there anything else to do? You're injured. Don't run around. What if you hurt your body? Girls should cherish themselves. The beautiful master waved his hand. Chu Qingyan was speechless. Who was the person who ordered her to do things just now? Come, my disciple's daughter-in-law. Let master take your pulse. The beautiful master called out to her. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.